outside on a rerun.
What's a rerun?
What is up? What is up? Welcome those of you regular offenders who have followed me over here from the shit show to reality decoded. Hopefully Sweet Cheeks will be joining us very shortly, aka L78, but I think she's having difficulties hearing me, so bear with me 1 second and let me let her know we are live on RD now. Okay, right guys, excuse me there. Let's do something. Let's get the camera on. Actually, I've got to do something else first. That is the feature presentation ready to go. Welcome, and I should be in glorious black and white. Bear with me guys, let me change my filter. I don't know why it does this. And we need some illumination. I should have done that, but 4 minutes and 20 seconds wasn't long enough for me to jump over from one to the other. But we've got, how many regular offenders have we got watching at the minute? I can't even see, but I can see Mick Brown, Tuna, D-Nice, Denise, Lugras, I'm sorry brother or sister if I'm pronouncing that wrong, sorry I can't get any plug in the socket. But what we have got here, there's not going to be an awful lot of interaction live. I do have a pre-recorded presentation which is part of the Reality Decoded rerun week that I had attended for this week, but went a little bit sidetracked. But I did promise some of my regular offenders that I would be coming at you on Friday night with a double feature, which was going to be All Out Apocalypse. But as we've already established, we've been talking about Fema Friday become a little bit of a theme, and thought let's try to put together a little bit of a shit video productions extravaganza for you all, and you can spend this Friday evening hanging out with me and Al, and hopefully she will, as I said, be joining us momentarily in the chat. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Is everything all right here? I'm using my mic over here. The trouble is, if I use my microphone when I'm in StreamYards, I have the same problem as my co-host did just a second ago, and she couldn't hear me, which is a little bit of a problem when you are trying to live stream together. But the stuff that we have seen is things that I've pre-recorded from a couple of years ago, maybe even nearly 3 years ago, which is all still very, very relevant in regards to Fema, and it is a little bit of a deeper and darker ride than we just had before. We're going to be really looking into the nitty-gritty of what Fema can actually do. Now, some of this content that we have seen this evening was community striked on another shit video production channel, TSP TV, but has managed to remain uploaded on Reality Decoded. So if or not this is going to get us a strike for what we're going to see tonight, I'm willing to take the bullet for the team on this one. But there is a lot of information involved in this double feature. It is a little bit longer than the 25-minute pre-recorded segment we saw nearly 4 hours ago now when we started our Fema Friday proceedings over at the shit show. But it does run in about 3-something hours. But if you've got nothing better to do on this Friday night, you've got 3 hours of entertainment ahead of you, looking at the darker nature of Fema. And I am going to actually try and experiment a little bit this evening, because with the pre-recorded presentation I can stop and start it and activate the mic. So maybe we're trying to do, or I will try and do a little bit of what we were doing at the shit show through that pre-recorded segment, and sort of stop it and add sort of any input that comes to mind, or address any comments, and if or not anyone is still here in 3 hours time, we will come back and sort of chat and hang out and let sort of themes and topics go by the window, and just chill on a Friday night, smoke some weed, drink some beers, have a shot of tequila, whatever you need to do to get your weekend on. But Fema has always been an interesting sort of subject to me, as is DARPA, and it is an organization I've looked very deeply in. And as I was saying with my co-host Al, and where she was saying, we could go on indefinitely down the FEMA rabbit hole, as well as DARPA. They in HARP and CERN, you know, they're almost endless avenues of exploration in possibilities, in explanations as to why they're doing what they're doing and why they're doing the real reasons for what they are doing and what they're doing. But, you know, my sort of trying to decode the reality and what's been going on for the last sort of couple of months with these train derailments, the objects, toxic gas, evacuations, crazy snowstorms, a whole bunch of FEMA drills, empty Walmarts, military deployment, albeit the military guard assisting with some of these natural disasters. I've also heard that they may have been put in place in certain cities to protect the banks from any potential bank runs or civil unrest that might come as a result of banking collapses. But they are also personnel that are able to assist with FEMA, and as we've already established, FEMA, nobody answers to FEMA. Everybody, FEMA answers to no one. Everybody answers to FEMA, including the President of the United States. And over the years, various presidents of the United States have pre-signed executive orders for FEMA, so they're ready to go when they need them. They can carry them around. And that is what we're going to be looking into tonight. We're going to be looking into the first Walmart stream that I did was called Walmartial Law, Camp FEMA, and the second of the double bill will be called Radio FEMA FM 34.9, I believe, which is the field manual that is issued to FEMA personnel for you know, the standard operating procedures for almost any given natural disaster you may care to think about or consider, as well as any possible non-natural or unnatural disaster or man-made event, you know, in terms of if you wanted to go down the sort of emergency event of being a terrorist nature rather than one of a natural or unnatural source, or maybe even one from outside of our realms, be it aliens, extraterrestrials, or objects like comets or meteors. Let me check some of your chats, because we were having a bit of a good chat before we transitioned over here to so Al, you've made it, good to see you. Joe Ayala, you've made it. FEMA Friday. I thought I heard Thelma Friday. Thelma? There ain't no Thelma here. Bitch don't live here, fool. If anyone can tell me what movie that comes from, Thelma the Bitch Don't Live Here, I'll give you a Mexican Snickers bar made with real chocolate and sugar. I'm under the umbrella of HLS during any event in the San Francisco area, so you're in North Cal. Denise is saying, true, Miss Blanche, they had lots of kids. I remember Angela's Ashes, good book. If you white, you probably part Irish. So they say. I'd rather not be part Irish if I could help it. I don't have any sort of malice against the Irish. I think they're just sort of, you know, when you have close neighbours, it's a little bit like that. The Irish, the Welsh and the Scottish, and I'm pretty sure the Irish feel the same way about the Brits. But I'm sort of part Polak, although I have a British accent. I do have Polish blood in my veins. Al says, my co-host, I owned one prom DVD, or do you mean porn DVD in your life? Jenna Jameson was in it. Let me stop RD like comments that are on topic. No, that's all right. Chat amongst yourselves, talk about whatever you want. But as I said, we have got a lot of information regarding FEMA this evening to get through, and we've already had a very sort of long 3.5 hour session over at the shit show talking already about FEMA today, so I will forgive you for going a little bit off topic, but there is a lot of information. If you're not aware of it, it will be helpful to you. If you are aware of it, think of it as a refresher, and you know, make of this information what you will, and make of contemporary FEMA activity as you will. But there does seem to be a lot of ingredients in place that would be able to assist with a natural disaster, and in particular the alarm bells for me was the Frosty Force simulation. It was a multi-state drill. Are we about to see a multi-state event? Is there a reason that they are really evacuating people from places like East Ohio, and is there, you know, people being relocated, you know, as a result of the snow and ice in Southern California? So that being said, guys, I'm not going to bore you any longer. You've been listening to me talk long enough, although technically you are going to be listening to me talk some more, just pre-recordedly. But there are some other sort of videos and information contained within this presentation. So hopefully, guys, as I said, you might learn a thing or two, might refresh something you've forgotten. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to be enjoyable or entertainment, but people enjoy and get entertained by all sorts of things. So let's loosely use that term. And again, it is for educational and informative purposes under any copyright infringements we may or may not get as a result of showing the stream. I'm deactivating my mic. I'm going to come and join you in chat and about to press play. So bear with me, guys.
Welcome to this evening's feature presentation, Can Fema walmartial law, where we are going to be looking a little bit deeper at the conspiracy, maybe real actuality, of the Fema Walmart connection, and are they really truly secretly getting ready to implement concentration camps around the United States under the guise of vaccinations? This theory is in fact coming very, very much a reality in real time in a town near you at your local Walmart. But let's start out looking at contemporary news, and here we are over at DuckDuckGo, my search engine of choice, which I use on the Brave browser application. If or not that really does have any true impact over what I search and what I get tracked searching or not remains to be seen. But you can see here that we're in real time. This is today the news, and I popped in the search bar there at the top, Fema vaccination sites. And as we just scroll down here, the first one that pops up for us is from CNN. First Fema COVID-19 mass vaccination sites open in ... And believe you me, they are opening in pretty much every single state, and you can see that comes from 4 days ago in a joint effort with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the California governors.
Right. Sorry guys, it looks like we had a little bit of a technical glitch already. I had to shut down the computer. We're getting some echo, but let's get back to it. Hopefully that will be the last of the technical problems for the time being.
Office of Emergency Service, the large-scale vaccination sites at California State, and it goes on into the article. I'm not going to dive into it too much. You get the picture, I'm sure. Crippling storm hampers vaccinations as FEMA news.
Okay guys, I did say this stream would come at you technical glitch permitting, and it seems as though we have a technical glitch going. When I press the presentation, for some reason, let me come back to you on the camera and get rid of that for the second. Sorry about that. Let me know if you guys would get, why am I getting rid of it? Let's do that this way. For there. So we got a little bit into that stream, and already I could hear that in the background it was sort of repeating what I'd said in the live stream and then repeating it again and again. I'm not picturing funny walking. The sound was a little bit weird. Obviously I did not edit it like that. When I edited it, the sound was picture perfect and very crisp and clear. So I don't know what the glitch is there exactly. Let's try and do it one more time, because I don't want to have to abandon this stream or before we've started it if I can help it, especially after we sort of bigged it up and we've got a good bunch of people watching. I've deactivated my mic, I've turned the volume down on my other devices, I've closed all the tabs on my laptop so there's no echo. Or hopefully no echo, so I don't know what is causing the sound issues. But the other good thing is I forgot we've got a couple of people that are from across the pond, and they noticed the Tales of the Unexpected music, which was where the inspiration and the origin for My Little Dancing Girl come from, a show that used to scare the shit out of me back in the day growing up in England. But fingers crossed, if we do have sound issues, I don't know where we're going to go with this, but as I did say earlier, I had a lot of problems with this streaming application on Tuesday that may be giving me different problems this time, but let's try again and you will succeed. Try spitting, once bitten, twice shy is the saying. I don't know where I'm going with that, but let's try and play.
So, welcome to this evening's feature presentation, Camp Fema Martial Law, where we are going to be looking at a little bit deeper at the conspiracy, maybe real actuality, of the Fema Walmart connection, and are they really, truly, secretly getting ready to implement concentration camps around the United States under the guise of vaccination sites? In this presentation, we are going to look at a little bit of evidence and some articles and a couple of videos from the past that will support possibly that this theory is in fact coming very, very much a reality in real time in a town near you at your local Walmart. But let's start out looking at contemporary news, and here we are over at DuckDuckGo, my search engine of choice, which I use on the Brave browser application. If or not that really does have any true impact over what I search and what I get tracked searching or not remains to be seen. But you can see here that we're in real time. This is today the news, and I popped in the search bar there at the top, Fema vaccination sites. And as we just scroll down here, the first one that pops up for us is from CNN. First Fema COVID-19 mass vaccination sites open in And believe you me, they are opening in pretty much every single state. And then you can see that comes from 4 days ago in a joint effort with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the California Governor's Office of Emergency Service. The large-scale vaccination sites at California State, and then it goes on into the article. We're not going to dive into it too much. You get the picture, I'm sure. Crippling storm hampers vaccinations as FEMA opens new sites. And with a paralyzing winter storm that wrought havoc with COVID-19 vaccination efforts around the country on Tuesday, forcing cancellation of appointments and delaying vaccine deliveries, just as the federal government rolled out a new mass vaccination sites aim at reaching hard-hit communities. FEMA opened. And believe it or not, some of these vaccination sites are going to be opened on Walmart grounds or within Walmart, I believe, in some cases. But FEMA is deploying or supporting vaccination efforts in 11 states. There you go. Arizona, Nevada, Texas, and Washington. Some of these states are under state of emergency. And it's very important to understand that being under a state of emergency is not too far removed from being martial law. In fact, there's probably only a zigzags width differentiation between martial law and state of emergency. Under a state of emergency, government do have the option to deploy troops onto the street, and not only that, they do have the option to hand over to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which then can act with powers greater than the United States president himself, and does not have to go through Congress and such forth in order to do exactly what it wants, that it feels is the best way to manage whatever particularly emergency it was that they were called in to manage. But anyway, mass COVID-19 vaccination sites in Dallas. There is the FEMA home site. Let's have a little quick click on that. Texas winter storm response. Our teams are in Texas supporting disaster relief efforts related to the recent winter storm. We are with the state to help distribute critical resources and supplies. So is this a little bit about the I mean, I'm not going to go too much into it there, but search your location, vaccine support. It responds to severe weather. President Biden Jr. approves major disaster declaration for Texas. And was the disaster in Texas created by weather warfare technology used against an unsuspecting population, not only to sort of cripple a little bit of the sort of infrastructure due to a result of maybe ice and snow build-up, accidents as a result of people unused to being in such conditions, to the effects of people that kind of had to live without power for a day or two due to rolling power outages down there in Texas during the winter storm. And I do know a few of us that do watch are resident Texans and did experience some of the effects of that winter storm down there. But as you do know, I do reside in Canada, where those such winter storms are pretty much an everyday occurrence, and we do sort of also get the occasions where power lines come down and there's not enough salt to put on the roads, or there's not enough trucks to get out on the roads and stuff like that. But I can only imagine it would be that much more worse in a state that isn't really catered or isn't really subjected to such conditions. It doesn't really warrant spending too much money on efforts to that. But here we are over at the news sections. Vaccine appointments open for zip codes there in Queen of Brooklands, and there was one we just saw, I think, from the Associated Press about the storm hampering vaccination as FEMA opens new site. Sorry about that. Tampa will have 4 FEMA coronavirus vaccination sites in Florida. The first FEMA COVID-19 mass vaccination sites open in Cali amid a supply shortage. Nigeria approves AstraZeneca vaccines. AstraZeneca, they're an interesting company. But there you go. There's quite a few there. Florida again, New York again in some FEMA vaccination sites. New Orleans, there you go, Cajun agent. If you're watching, you're due to be getting yourself a Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA camp at some time soon. And FEMA operated again, Florida, Florida, Florida. FEMA eyes Milwaukee for potential federal vaccination site. They're opening up in Philly, California again, Pennsylvania, yada 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 yada, whoop de woo. It goes on and on and on. There's a lot of news and articles about FEMA vaccination sites opening up in a town or city near you. So who exactly are FEMA is who we are going to go and have a little look at now. We're going to try and keep this as sort of brief and short as we can, and within a sort of 2-hour time frame if we can. But as I do mention sometimes, information has no time restraint. It takes as long as it takes in order to pass it on. But I am working against a deadline, so to speak, in order to get this ready for the presentation you are now currently watching, or maybe watching when I do eventually upload just the presentation part to TSP TV. So stay tuned. We're going to go and have a little delve in, deeper look at to who exactly FEMA are and what their purpose is in the grand scale of things. Okie dokie, so here we go. FEMA, the secret government, and this is a piece written by Harry V. Martin with research and assistance from David Cole. I'm guessing that's how you say it, Cole. Copyright Free America and Henry V. Martin, 1995. So some people have referred to it as the secret government of the United States. And they are referring to FEMA in this instant, guys, unless you haven't realized that yet. But it is not an elected body. It does not involve itself in public disclosures, and it even has a quasi-secret budget in the billions of dollars. This government organization has more power than the President of the United States or the Congress. It has the power to suspend laws, move entire populations, arrest and detain citizens without a warrant, and hold them without a trial. And they may well be holding them without trial at some of their so-called vaccination sites that are now rolling out across the United States, coast to coast. Yo, beware, FEMA is on their way, but it can also seize property, food supplies, transportation systems, and can suspend, most importantly, the Constitution. Not only is it the most powerful entity in the United States, but it was not even created under constitutional law by the Congress. It was a product of a presidential executive order. No, it is not the US military nor the Central Intelligence Agency. They are subject to Congress. The organization is called FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, as they point out there. Originally conceived in the Richard Nixon administration, and it was refined by President Jimmy Carter. We looked yesterday in the Tavistock Touch presentation how Tavistock picked and brainwashed and programmed President Jimmy Carter for the role of president, and was his role of president to refine the FEMA Act. But anyway, he had given Jimmy Carter was the one that refined it, and it was given teeth in the Ronald Reagan and George Bush administration. That's George Bush Sr. And if you do recall, we've seen maybe once or more than once on TSP TV, in reality, Decoded, George Bush's senior's speech about the New World Order that he gave on September the 11th, 1991, 10 years prior to the event. It's around 10 years ago that the Pandemic Act, I think, was implemented into Canadian law, or it might have been 2005. But back to the article. FEMA had one original concept when it was created, and that was to assure the survivability of the United States government in the event of a nuclear attack on this nation. So it was founded during the height of the Cold War. And it was also provided with the task of being a federal coordinating body during times of a domestic disaster, such as earthquakes, floods, and hurricanes. Some of you guys down there in the south, I know when I was out in California, earthquakes were something I did experience. A few earthquakes in my time then, nothing ever really like the movie Earthquake that come out in the 70s. Dennis, was it Irwin Allen? Yeah, that's it, Irwin Allen production, one of those disaster blockbuster movies of the time. Maybe those blockbuster movies at the time were in fact a little bit of predictive programming, or even some sort of programmatic nature to sort of introduce the idea of disasters to the public on a mass scale through the movie theaters, and then eventually on VHS in reruns over and over on basic cable. But they got us used to the idea of the disasters that may or may not be of natural or man-made origins, that could be a possible threat to humanity and would require some assistance overcoming. And there you have the introduction of Fema to do just that. So they get us used to the idea of fiction and then provide us a real solution to those problems. And then if or not they choose to augment our reality by using psychological operations and false flag events against us in order to problem reaction solution us towards the one world order. But FEMA, as we said, domestic disasters such as earthquakes and stuff, and as I said, some of you all down there in the south will be hurricanes and floods. Poor little Nancy in Katrina, Louisiana, lived through Katrina. Some of you all down there, was it Storm Sandy a few years that hit Texas, and now again Texas is being hit, maybe disabling and disrupting and crippling the most one of the most resourceful and self-sustainable states in the United States before any eventual real kind of militarized presence is pushed into power. But these things, domestic disasters, are things that also FEMA can handle, and we are currently in some sort of domestic disaster under the pandemic. And again, some of you all down there in the south are still in a state of emergency due to that freak winter storm. It's been a little bit devastating down there, but its awesome powers grow under the tutelage of people like Colonel Oliver North and General Richard Secord, the architects on the Iran-Contra scandal and the looting of America's savings and loan institutions. FEMA has even been given control of the State Defense Forces, a ragtag, often considered neo-Nazi civilian army that will substitute for the National Guard if the Guard is called to duty overseas. The most powerful organization in the United States is FEMA. Though it may be the most powerful organization in the United States, few people know it even exists, although I'm pretty sure quite a few of you watching do know it exists. But if you don't, here it is. This is what FEMA is and what they're all about, and why you may have a little bit of cause concern as to why they might be introducing vaccination sites in and around the states in a town near you. And as we progress through this presentation, you might be even more alarmed by the end of it. So stay tuned. 99% of you won't be brave enough. I'm sure you will. But anyway, though it may be the most powerful, as we just read, not many people know it exists, but it has crept into our private lives. Even mortgage papers contain FEMA's name in small print. In the property in question is near a flood plan. FEMA was deeply involved in the Los Angeles riots and in the '89 Loma Prieta earthquake in the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of the black helicopter traffic reported throughout the United States, but mainly in West California, Washington, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Colorado, are flown by FEMA personnel. FEMA has been given responsibility for many new disasters, including urban forest fires, home heating emergencies, something some of you were suffering recently this week in Texas with the power outs and the frigid cold storm that brought ice and snow to your backyard. But refugee situations, urban riots, and emergency planning for nuclear and toxic incidents in the West, it works in conjunction with the Sixth Army. FEMA was created in a series of executive orders. A presidential executive order, whether constitutional or not, becomes law simply by its publication in the Federal Registry. Congress is bypassed. Executive Order number 12148 created the Federal Emergency Management Agency that is to interface with the Department of Defense for civil defense planning and funding. An emergency czar was appointed. FEMA has only spent about 6% of its budget on national emergencies. The bulk of their funding has been used for the construction of secret underground facilities to assure continuity of government in case of major emergency, foreign or domestic. And the Executive Order number 12656 appointed the National Security Council as the principal body that should consider emergency powers. This allows the government to increase domestic intelligence and surveillance of US citizens and would restrict the freedom of movement within the United States and grant the government the right to, this is a very, very big word to realize and take in here, isolate large groups of civilian. We are all being isolated under the guise of the Pandemic Act to keep us safe and secure from a harmful disease and virus that has a 99% survival rate. We are being told to isolate. Let that sink in, guys. But anyway, the National Guard could be federalized to seal all borders and take control of US airspace and all ports of entry. Here are just a few executive orders associated with FEMA that would suspend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. These executive orders have been on record for nearly 30 years and could be enacted by the stroke of a presidential pen. Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaport. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Again, down in Texas in the last week. Power, gasoline, petroleum, fuels, and even food supplies have been in short supply. Were they taken over by FEMA? Executive Order 10998 allows the government to take over food and resources and farms. Remember, again, yesterday in the talk about Tavistock, in the Tavistock Touch, we talked about the communists and the Bolsheviks and the kulaks, and how the kulaks did delay the eventual communist takeover by being self-independent, by being farmers. And again, FEMA here has the right to seize farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Something to bear in mind here, that the detention or the death camps rather of World War II, operated by the National Socialist Party of Germany, were also work camps, and they also provided an awful lot of slave labor for some of the big militarized industrial complex. In particular, George Bush Sr., he got a little bit of benefit from this in his oil company back there, as well as I think Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company. But back to this Executive Order 1101. But before we do, just to reiterate before I do forget, that maybe the civilians might be mobilized into work brigades at these vaccination sites, and maybe the work brigades might be on body detail, some might be on digging the grave detail, some might be on filling the grave detail, if you get what I mean. And I actually have Polish grandparents that survived World War II concentration camps, and being Polish, their demise was to be the ones that did indeed dig the graves and bury the corpses. And my grandmother in particular was on precious metal reclamation. She used to go over the corpses and take out earrings, rings, necklaces, and such forth, and then hand them over to her Gestapo overlords for melting down for whatever the Nazis did with it. But sorry, I did digress a little bit there. But Executive Order 11001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. So this is what FEMA can do, guys. They have the power to do all of this. Executive Order 11002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports and aircraft, including commercial. Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be, this is an interesting word, abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Maybe a new location for a population might be a vaccination site, seeing as we're here sort of vaccinating people. You know, the tents are up. Why not make use of them? We can relocate people here. Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11051 rather, specifies the responsibility of Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put executive order in effect to in times of increased international tensions and economical or financial crisis. So basically, this order, in the events of those things that we just mentioned, international tensions and economical or financial crisis, means that you can just make up your own executive orders as a whim, as you please, in accordance to whatever that crisis is. Executive Order 11310 grants authority to put the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders to institute industrial support. The militarized industrial complex would be the Institute of Industrial Support in that question, to establish judicial and legislative liaison to control all aliens. Very, very interesting word there, to control all aliens, be they from other side of borders or maybe of extraterrestrial, but to also operate penal and correctional institutions and to advise and assist the president rather. Correctional and penal institutions might be a thing that you use your vaccination sites for once you vaccinated people, right? As signs emergency preparedness function to federal departments and agencies, consolidate in 21 operative executive orders issued over a 15-year period, and that is Executive Order 11049. And I believe this is the last one they are going to highlight for us here, is Executive Order 11921, that allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution, taking control of the means of labor and then maybe enforcing populations into that workforce of the labor that you've now acquired under the Executive Order of 11921. It also the production of distribution, it has the control over the production and distribution, but also of energy sources, wages, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in the United States financial institution, and in any national emergency. It also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the president, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has broad powers in every aspect of the nation. General Frank Salzado, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Chief of FEMA's Civil Security Division, stated in 1983 conference that he saw FEMA's role as a new frontier in the protection of individual and governmental leaders from assassination. and of civil and military installations from sabotage and or attack, as well as prevention of dissident groups from gaining access to US opinion or a global audience in times of crisis. So removing the opposition may be removing the rights of individuals that may be YouTubers or may have their own independent website, or you can remove that from the global audience in times of these crises. FEMA's powers are consolidated, or were consolidated, by President Carter to incorporate the National Security Act of 1947, which allows for the strategic relocation of industries, services, government, and other essential economic activities, and to rationalize the requirements for manpower, resources, and production. The 1950 Defense Production Act, which gives the president sweeping powers over all aspects of the economy. The Act of August 29, 1916, which authorizes the Secretary of the Army in time of war to take possession of any transportation system for transporting troops, material, or any other purpose related to the emergency. Maybe the purpose of relocating populations elsewhere and then enforcing them into labor camps, perhaps. The International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which enables the president to seize the property of a foreign country or national. Interesting. These powers were transferred to FEMA in a sweeping consolidation in 1979. Hurricane Andrew focused attention on FEMA. FEMA's deceptive role really did not come to light with much of the public until Hurricane Andrew smashed into the United States mainland. As Russell R. Dines, director of Disaster Research Center of the University of Delaware, wrote, "In the world and the eye of the political storm hovered over the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA became a convenient target for criticism because FEMA was accused of dropping the ball in Florida. The media and Congress commenced to study this agency. What came out of the critical look was that FEMA was spending 12 times more for black operations than for disaster relief, and it spent $1.3 billion building secret bunkers throughout the United States in anticipation of a government disruption by foreign or domestic upheaval. Yet fewer than 20 members of Congress, only members with top security clearance, know of the $1.3 billion expenditure by FEMA for non-natural disaster situations. These few congressional leaders state that FEMA has a black curtain around its operations, and FEMA has worked on national security programs since 1979. And its predecessor, the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency, has secretly spent millions of dollars before being merged into FEMA by President Carter. FEMA has developed 300 sophisticated mobile units that are capable of sustaining themselves for a month. The vehicles are located in 5 areas of the United States. They have tremendous communication systems, and each contains a generator that would provide power to 120 homes each, but have never been used for disaster relief. FEMA's enormous powers can be triggered easily in any form of domestic or foreign problem. Perceived and not always actual emergency powers can be enacted. The President of the United States now has the broader powers to declare martial law, which activates FEMA's extraordinary powers. Martial law can be declared during the time of increased tensions overseas, economic problems within the United States, such as a depression, during civil unrest, such as demonstrations or scenes like the LA riots, and in drug crisis. Now, guys, remember last year, 2020, did see an awful lot of protest. BLM, Antifa were out being radicalized, anti-lockdown protests. Stuff like this was almost a weekly occurrence around North America during the last year under the COVID pandemic. So, this does sort of constitute to a little bit of civil arrest, and just with a signing of a pen, FEMA can come in and take control. And some of these executive orders that we've just seen, they can use to disperse any problems that may be being caused by dissident domestic homeland what they consider terrorist or threats to the nation, I suppose. But these presidential powers have increased with successive crime bills, particularly in 91 and 93 crime bills, which increase the power to suspend the rights granted under the Constitution and to seize the property of those suspected of being drug dealers. To individuals who participate in a public protest or demonstration. This is why I'm telling you guys that maybe now is the time to maybe reconsider or rethink if or not you want to be putting yourself at risk at public protests or demonstrations right now. Not saying that you should cower and hide away, but sometimes the smart warrior knows that there are some battles that you can't find if you can't fight if you are locked up, or even worse, dead. But under the emergency plans already in existence, the power exists to suspend the Constitution and turn over the reins of government to FEMA, and appointing military commanders to run state and local governments. This is very, very fucking Star Wars in some ways. Regional governors had direct control and power over their sectors of the galaxy under the one galactic empire. But FEMA would then have the right to order the detention of anyone whom there is reasonable ground to believe will engage in or probably conspire with others to engage in acts of espionage or sabotage. The plan also authorized the establishment of concentration camps for detaining the accused, but no trial. Remember, guys, we just saw FEMA are rolling out their mass vaccination sites. Are they concentration camps in disguise? Are they about to start rounding up dissidents and taking them there? 3 times since '84, FEMA stood on the threshold of taking control of the nation. Once under President Reagan in '84, and twice under President Bush in 1990 and '92. But under those 3 scenarios, there was not a sufficient enough crisis to warrant risking martial law. Is there a sufficient crisis in contemporary times that would warrant martial law? And bear in mind, the National Guard, I do believe, have been deployed on the streets of DC till the end of the year under the new Biden administration. But most experts on the subject of FEMA and martial law insisted that a crisis has to appear dangerous enough for the people of the United States before they would tolerate or accept complete government takeover. The typical crisis needed would be a threat of imminent nuclear war, rioting in several US cities, something we saw last year and just mentioned, simultaneously, a series of national disasters that expect widespread danger to the populace, massive terrorist attacks, a depression in which tens of millions are unemployed and without financial resources, or a major environmental disaster. Now, bear in mind, guys, millions of people who are non-essential are now unemployed. How long are they going to be remaining with financial assistance, be able to financially sustain themselves before it becomes an issue for FEMA to be able to take in control? Three times FEMA stood by ready for emergency. In 1984, April of that year, President Reagan signed Presidential Dictator number 54 that allowed FEMA to engage in a secret national readiness exercise under the code name of Rex 84. Something we might have to look in. Rex 84 is something that could well be the rounding up of maybe African American citizens and detaining them in the above mentioned camps that FEMA do have the executive order to open, implement, and populate. The exercise was to test FEMA's readiness to assume military authority in the event of a state of domestic national emergency. Concurrent with the launching of a direct United States military operation in Central America. The plan called for the deputation of U.S. military and National Guard units so they could legally be used for domestic law enforcement. These units would be assigned to conduct sweeps and take into custody an estimated 400,000 undocumented Central American immigrants in the United States. The immigrants would then be interned to 10 detention centers to be set up at military bases throughout the country. Rex 84 was so highly guarded that special metal security doors were placed on the 5th floor of the FEMA building in Washington, D.C. Even long-standing employees of the Civil Defense of the Federal Executive Department processing the highest possible security clearances were not being allowed through the newly installed metal security doors. Only personnel wearing a special red Christian cross or crucifix, or maybe a red cross like the red cross of the Rothschild shield, lapel pin, and these were the only individuals wearing. That was their little identifying hall pass, I guess, into the premises. But Lieutenant Colonel North, and Colonel North, I think he was somebody definitely that was active during the Gulf Wars, and maybe we heard from him also in the events after 9/11. But he was responsible for drawing up the emergency plan, which U.S. Attorney General William French Smith opposed. Vehemently, I'm not sure if I said that right, but the plan called for the suspension of the Constitution, turning control of the government over to FEMA, and appointment of military commanders to run state and local governments, and the declaration of martial law. The presidential executive order to suspend such a plan were already in place. The plan also advocated the rounding up to transfer assembly centers or relocation camps of at least 21 million American Negroes in the event of massive rioting or disorder. BLM guys, they're pretty big and active on the political front and have known to riot a time or two in the last few months. Are they kind of purposely being directed and led, the Pied Piper effect? Few controlled opposition leader members that call out to others to follow them, and then 21 million might be rounded up and taken off to these camps, and it is not unlike the rounding up of the Jews in Nazi Germany of 1930s. And this is what I'm talking about, guys. Are they about to do this? Is the fourth, the Fourth Reich being unfolded? Are the detention camps? Is it a smart time to be out and putting yourself at risk and being aware of the threat? Now, I'm not telling you this is gonna definitely happening, but it's looking like it's happening, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong. The evidence we just saw, local recent news that many FEMA sites, vaccination sites are being set up. We're looking at all the executive orders, all the fact that states of emergency are in fact enough to warrant FEMA presence, and then they can activate all those scary and draconian executive orders that we just heard about. But the second known time that FEMA stood was in 1990 when Desert Storm was enacted. Prior to the President Bush's invasion of Iraq, FEMA began to draft new legislation to increase its already formidable powers. One of the elements incorporated into the plan was to set up operations with any state or locality without the prior permission of local or state authorities. Such prior permission has always been regarded in the past. Much of the mechanism being set into place was an anticipation for the economic collapse of the Western world. The war with which Iraq may have been conceived as a ploy to boost the bankrupt economy, but it only pushed the West into deeper recession. Now, thank you. At this point, I must point out to one of our newfound viewers, Melody, who sent me a very interesting article about the economic reset and the demise of the dollar. And this is a little bit what we're looking at here, the economic collapse. Are they building in creating situations and the depression? You know, things are getting pretty damn fucking depressing under lockdown conditions for a lot of people. A lot of people out of work. This is it. It's all kind of piecing the pieces together, reading what these executive orders have been put in place for, seeing that these things that these orders have been put in place for kind of happen in real time. You've got to scratch your head, you've got to rub your chin, and you've got to stop and consider the possibility that maybe this is very, very, very real and happening to us in real time, folks. The conspiracy is becoming our reality. But the third scenario for FEMA was it came, with the Los Angeles riots after Rodney King. Why can't we all just get along? Well, brutality verdict was heard. Had the rioting spread to other cities, FEMA would have been empowered to step in. As it was, major rioting only occurred in the Los Angeles area, thus preventing a pretext for a FEMA response. In July of 1987, the Miami Herald published reports on FEMA's new goals. The goal was to suspend the Constitution in the event of a national crisis, such as a nuclear war, violent and widespread internal dissent, or national opposition to a U.S. military invasion abroad. Lieutenant Colonel North was the architect. National Security Directive number 52, issued in August of 82, pertains to the use of National Guard troops to quell disturbances. Moving on, the crux of the problem is that FEMA has the power to turn the United States into a militarized police state in time of real crisis or manufactured crisis. Lieutenant Colonel North virtually established the apparatus for dictatorship. Only the criticism of the Attorney General prevented the plans from being adopted, but intelligence reports indicate that FEMA has a folder with 22 executive order for the president to sign in case of an emergency. It is believed those executive orders contain the framework of North's concepts, delayed by criticism but never truly abandoned. The crisis, as the government now sees it, is civil unrest. For generations, the government was concerned with nuclear war, but the violent and destructive demonstrations that surrounded the Vietnam War, again, we looked at Tavistock's involvement in creating counterculture in the 1960s, and how psychedelic drugs and rock and roll music and psychedelic pop warped the minds of the teenagers and radicalized them into protesting the Vietnam War, though they had quite right to. It was a phony war in itself. But it prompted, during the Vietnam era, it prompted President Nixon to change the direction of emergency powers from wartime to times of domestic unrest. Diana Reynolds, program director of the Edward R. Murrow Center, summed up the dangers of FEMA today and the public reaction to martial law in a drug crisis. It was James Madison's worst nightmare that a righteous fraction would someday be strong enough to sweep away the constitutional restraints designed by farmers to prevent the tyranny of a centralized power taking control. and executive and excessive privilege, and arbitrary governmental authority over the individual. These restraints, the balancing and checking of power amongst branches and layers of government and civil guarantees would be the first casualties in a drug induced national security state with Reagan's civil emergency preparedness unleashed. Sorry, I don't know why I try to get through that in one breath almost, but nevertheless, there would be those who would be welcome NSC, National Security Council, into the drug fray, believing that increasing state police powers to emergency levels is the only way left to fight America's enemy from within. Another thing to bear in mind since the events of 9/11, guys, opium dependency and addiction has grown exponentially in North America. Here out on the west coast of Canada and even here in Toronto, fentanyl is a very, very big issue, and you can even get yourself a free like injection pen. If you see someone overdosing, you can just jab it in their leg and save their life, and that is how big of a problem it is on the streets in some Canadian cities. And I certainly know south of the border that the oxycontins in the Vicodins, or the hillbilly heroin, is oxy was once known, is a big deal for a lot of Americans to cope with. But where were we? Nevertheless, welcomed in their increasing state powers from the enemy within. In short, they would run a national security state and would probably be a relief to those whose personal security and quality of life has been diminished by drugs or drug related crime. And as the general public watches the progression of institutional chaos and social decay, they too may be willing to pay the ultimate price. One drug free America for 200 years of democracy. The first targets in any FEMA emergency would be the Hispanics and the blacks. The FEMA orders calls for them to be rounded up and detained. Tax protesters, demonstrators against government military intervention outside US borders, and people who maintain weapons in their homes are also targets. Operation Trojan Horse was a program designed to learn the identity of potential opponents to martial law. The program lures potential protesters into public forums conducted by a hero of the public who advocates survival training. The list of names gathered at such meetings and in such rallies are computerized and then targeted in case of an emergency. So, guys, bear in mind, this is going out to my Toronto friends and anyone that does frequent the anti-lockdown protests here in Toronto. Maybe, guys, reconsider it. It is important to stand up for our rights, but is it important enough to have your rights further removed while you are detained at the whim of a government agency without any trial, which means you can just be detained for as long as they want, guys? And again, there are one or two hero characters being put into play down at the lockdown protest there in Toronto that I know of. One of them is actually an actor. He's got a little bit of an acting background, but let's not get into that. I'm just pointing out, people, that you do need to be aware of things like Operation Trojan Horse, the Red Squad of communist tactics and communist takeover to draw out the dissidents, to lead them into disarray, to get them to start carrying out acts of non-compliance and maybe mindless vandalism and violence that will constitute to civil unrest, and then give FEMA the ability to round them up and take them away. But the most shining example of America to the world has been its peaceful transition of government from one administration to the other, until very recently we saw a far from peaceful transition. But despite crises of great magnitude, the United States has maintained its freedom and liberty. That's debatable, but this nation now stands on the threshold of rule by non-elected people, asserting non-constitutional powers. Even Congress cannot review a martial law action until 6 months after it has been declared. So technically, guys, they could declare tomorrow martial law, and it's going to be 6 months at the very earliest before it can be reviewed. So that means you could be under martial law for that duration of the 6 months, and who knows how much longer after, while Congress is looking if or not it should be lifted. And again, it was emergency powers granted to Emperor Palpatine in the fictional galaxy of Star Wars realms, that granted him access to roll out all of his executive orders in order to solidify the Republic into a one galactic empire. And one of his executive orders, if you remember, was Executive Order 66, the order to eliminate and execute the Jedi. Let that sink in, if you will. But the scenarios established to trigger FEMA into action were generally found in the society today: economic collapse, civil unrest, drug problem, terrorist attack, and protest against America intervention in a foreign country. Sorry. All these premises exist, and all of these premises are sort of going on in real time. You could almost, like, there's drug problems. Are we getting terrorist attacks? They did sort of label the storming of Congress as a little bit of domestic terrorism. How long is it going to be before BLM and all of these? I do actually think some of them are classified as terrorist organizations, or Antifa perhaps are, maybe not BLM, but all of these premises exist, and it can only be a matter of time in which one of these triggers the entire emergency necessary to bring FEMA into action. And then it may be too late, because under the FEMA plan there is no contingency by which constitutional power is restored. And that is the end of the article, guys, on FEMA, the secret government. If your eyes ain't open and your alarm bells ain't ringing by now, then wait. It's going to get darker and deeper. Now we're going to look a little bit now at the Walmart connection and how they play a part in all of this. And are we seeing the unveiling, and is the crisis being created before our eyes in order to trigger the FEMA martial law executive orders? Stay tuned, guys. We will be back immediately, but I do need to have a refresher break, so see you very, very shortly. Okay, guys, so things are done in secret. Let's have a little look at the Walmart connection here and what exactly part Walmart play. Now, Walmart, in fact, do receive quite a lot of government subsidies, and do get a lot of tax breaks for kind of playing along with governmental requirement, and are a very, very interesting organization with a global reach. But the truth about Walmart, and in brackets, FEMA camps and the coming American Holocaust. Bear in mind, guys, this was on July 26th of 2015 that this article was written. It is around that time that I did start paying an awful lot of attention to the Walmart, to the FEMA camps, because there was a lot of articles being situated and circulating on YouTube at the time, in a sort of a period when YouTube wasn't as shadow banned and passively censored as it is now. And some of that stuff is gone, is lost in hard to trace, although there are still quite a few Walmart FEMA camp conspiracy theory videos on there. But is it conspiracy theory anymore? Is it becoming actual reality? It does certainly look a little bit like that. But it's around that time that I got very, very concerned about sort of, why we're hearing about all these FEMA camps, why people are seeing things like coffins, and why Walmart are being closed down. And I think maybe in around 2016 or something, Walmart also did a deal with the United States government to employ former military veterans as part of a sort of back to work, help our troops sort of deal. For many veterans that are sort of unemployed, Walmart stood up and said, hey, we'll give you 160,000 jobs. But bear in mind, guys, that's 160 personnel in Walmart that are military trained. And bear in mind, Walmart also sells ammunition and firearms, and has 160,000 employees who are military trained. I'll let that sink in. But it was a bit, and as I said, it was sort of around that time that, like, wait a minute, is something coming? And it was sort of some of these events and goings on that sort of led me to believe that we are due something. In the not so distant future, and it's sort of in around sort of 2018, and I started speaking to some other sort of conspiracy type people, and that's kind of in around the time that the concept for TSPTV, or the thrift store prepper as it was known then, come into effect, because I had a feeling something was on its way, something was on the cards. The Department of Homeland Security, I think in 2017 or 18, made an announcement that every United States citizen should have enough preparations on hand: food, medical supplies, medicine, whatever it is that you need, soap, toiletries, sheets, propane, fossil fuels, whatever, on hand for a period of 6 months of state of emergency. And that was me looking at them telling us what they're going to do, and that we need to be prepared for at least 6 months, which told me I think we need to be prepared for double that. And I did then take it upon myself to build the emergency pantry that were the videos that started out being the uploads on my channel in its infancy. And over a period of a year, I managed to build quite a stocked pantry that I have been living on for the last year. So sorry about that, to digress. But that was around the sort of time that I did start getting alarm bells, start thinking to myself, something's coming. Did start sort of talking to a few people, started seeing that some of these conspiracies that I have been looking at are starting to come real. And one of the conspiracies that I had been looking at quite a lot, certainly in the aftermaths of 9/11, is Fema and their connection to Walmart. But let's carry on with this article. I really like this website. The grey and the white does suit the channel and my nature very well. But Walmart, the world's largest corporation with annual revenue into the billions and the large majority of Americans as customers, many people think Walmart is simply an example of one man, Sam Walton's success. Hopefully we'll have time to see a little bit more about who he is before this ends. But what if Walmart had something else going on behind closed doors? The Illuminati symbols are everything. Without symbols, the Illuminati could not communicate. Secret societies must use symbols as communication because organizations like the Freemasons, etc., work in secret. Therefore, secret societies must communicate in code. Here is a picture of the Walmart's logo throughout the years. There you go. Stop and pause if you want to look longer. But in 1992, Walmart changed from a dash to a 5-pointed star. In 2008, they changed from a 5-pointed star to a sunburst. The sun is very popular in Freemasonry and mystery schools. The sun was worshipped by ancient civilizations such as Babylon, Egypt. Babylon sun worship never went away. Babylonian sun worship has simply been hidden from much of humanity's eyes. Sun worship is disguised in today's cosmology, heliocentricity in today's music. And he's got a post that you can see on hidden sun worship in music lyrics. We might investigate maybe. But in the Roman Catholic Church, halos in many of the logos of corporation, the sun is important in Satan worship because the sun brings light, or the illumination, as the name Lucifer means light bearer. The Bible condemns sun worship in Ezekiel 8, and sun worship is a mockery of the true Son of the Lord Jesus Christ. The truth is, companies display the sun logo as a symbol of communication to let the initiated know they are working for the principalities and powers. And there's a couple of examples there of sun. But Walmart's logo, however, is something more. The new Walmart logo is a 6-pointed star disguised as a sun, and there it is right there for you. The yellow top point connects the bottom points on the left and the right, and the bottom right connects the two top points on the left and the right, creating a Star of David. The Star of David symbols has 6.6 angles and 6 sides, the number of the Antichrist. Now, please note, this is by no means an attack against the nation of Israel or the Jewish people, and I'm not suggesting the Jews are behind this. The American flag contains occult symbols as well, and that is on behalf of the author. However, at the time went on, Walmart started showing their allegiance to the New World Order by displaying such a symbol. So now in 2015, Walmart has become of a grand conspiracy to detain anti-NWO, freedom-loving Christians stroke civilians like you and me, and anti-New World Order Jews in America, as we also saw Hispanic and African Americans. Then, when all the people are taken out of the way and held without trial indefinitely, the New World Order can begin to be implemented. They will round up all the rioters in the streets into these camps, and when the body of Christ begins to become persecuted in America, and there are quite a few people that feel there is an attack on Christianity right now. I am an atheist, but I'm not saying for the minute of or for 1 minute that you guys should become atheists like me. Keep your religion, keep your faith, keep you strong. That is what freedom is all about, guys. Believe what you want to believe. But they will be hauled away to the local Walmart for re-education or maybe forced vaccines. Finally, these Walmarts will become flat out extermination camps. What's the proof? Just this year, as Operation Jadehelm was put into effect, 5 Walmarts mysteriously shut down across America without warning, just when the US military starts conducting exercises preparing for civil war. 5 Walmarts closed down. The number 5 is extremely important because because founder of the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, talked about dividing civilization into 5 different sectors. Walmart has shut down 5 locations in 5 different states because these stores are going to be used as concentration camps for American citizens, a camp in each sector. How can all those citizens fit in just one Walmart per state? Because they are only going to be certain types of people in those camps, one of which would be people who rioted, stood up against the government too soon, which may not be many. Christians, simply because they're Christians, just as Christians in the Roman Empire were killed because they held beliefs contrary to the establishment. So we see history repeating. Jews, simply because Satan wants to exterminate them and because Daniel prophesies their persecution in the last days. Friends, if you are Christian, Jew, or simply want to investigate this more, do some research into the intermittent laws in America. The US Army has a division specifically for internment. White. Oh God, please help us. So there was a little short and sweet article there about Walmart and their connection to Fema, and they will be sort of kind of using these Walmart sites because they are all around America. You're never really that far away from one if you live in the United States, unless you are kind of out in the rural parts of the country. You might have a little bit of a trek, but for most guys living in a large city, there's never really a Walmart a stone's throw away from you. So anyway, let's go and see if we can have another little look at something regarding Sam Walton, the head and founder of Walmart, and his connections and part he plays all of this and his mysterious military background. We go with a little bit of another article where we are going to look more at Walmart and the Fema connection, and in particular look a little bit at Sam Walton, the founder and creator of Walmart. So interesting little picture there for you there. Walmart, martial law, RFID, and FEMA, Homeland Security concentration camps located. Now, new evidence points to fact that Walmart is connected to a government scheme, a plan to declare the martial state in the United States, martial law. In fact, Walmart stores might have been created for this very reason. Now, there is a video for us to watch, which we are going to watch, give you a little bit of a break from my voice for the next 7 or so minutes. So let's click on play.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
As I have gotten older, I have decided we really need camps for adults.
Camps for adults.
Alright guys, here's Walmart here. I gotta do this quick before security catches me out here. So there's the Walmart, right? So we're back over here in this kind of an empty field. And you'll see how it's kind of looks like there would be what looks like a huge tunnel. See this field, how it's been down? I really don't want to get caught here by security. But if you look, it's just weird how it extends to this land over here, like looks like something was dug out, just filled it back over with dirt at one point. So, are there tunnels under Walmart? Absolutely. The red arrows actually follow along the path where I believe would be the tunnel and where I was at shooting video earlier. You can see the parking lot looks to have new asphalt extended right over the top of what looks to be the tunnels.
Just recently, this black fence just popped up on the other side of the train. You can see these sort of train cars or storage units, but they look like, I don't know, like train tops, if you ask me. Looks like a mobile command. Center. Over here on the left, I just saw the biggest helicopter I have ever seen. I have never seen so many Walmart trucks in one spot.
Looking over here at this closed Walmart at Pico Rivera, California. That looks like porta potties. Look inside and see what they look like. It's like FEMA trailer porta potties, Mission Valley Sanitation. Reminds me of stuff I saw in Iraq. Yeah. FEMA style stuff. Over here you see what appears to be NASA on one of their bins. Maybe that's a garbage company or something, but that's pretty strange looking. All the outside is closed off. You can't see inside. I walked up to the front and it's all black trash bagged, blacked out. There's some of the, obviously a security camera right there. They're keeping watch on their store, their permanently closed store. This is Walmart Pico Rivera. Just want you to see. You can see in there completely empty. Completely empty in there. Those are the cash registers and nothing behind there. Absolutely empty. I don't know what's going on in there, but it's completely empty. That whole place is empty.
Hello, I make this video not a happy man. I'm at the neighborhood Walmart in San Jose, California. And this is what it has become. I did not want to believe it, but it's happening. Does this look like your friendly neighborhood Walmart to you? No. Anyone who knows anything about jail or anything about that knows what this is. That is a holding area. Oh, I'm not allowed to go past this line, actually, because the security guard told me if I do, it links up to the San Jose Police Department, and they will come here and arrest me. That's kind of weird for a Walmart that's not in use anymore. So let's go take a look at what they did to this neighborhood Walmart. And the way it's set up, too, is perfect. Look at it. They got a security. Why would you have a security camera right here? Why is this needed? What? This obviously looks like some sort of an entrance that they're going to have you coming in and out of. I mean, come on. Oh, God. Just come on. Look at this. So as you see, this is the parking lot. It's going to be busting you in. It's right off the 101.
Hello, YouTube community. I'd like to show you this. I found it has a license plate for Arkansas, and as you can see, this is a Walmart disaster response team. This pretty much confirms that this is going to be a FEMA camp.
Hi, I'm Janet Napolitano, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Homeland Security begins with hometown security. That's why I'm pleased that Walmart is helping to make our communities more safe and secure. If you see something suspicious in the parking lot or in the store, say something immediately. Report suspicious activity to your local police or sheriff. If you need help, ask a Walmart manager.
Walmart has struck a deal with the U.S. government, hiring 130,000 reserve, active duty, and veterans in the United States over the past 3 years. A massive force of highly trained and skilled soldiers. It's an odd fact, because recently they just fired thousands of regular workers and closed 269 stores because of financial problems.
Reporting from the Springdale Walmart, or the closed down Walmart in Ohio. I want people to notice I'm on the back side of the compound, and this wire runs a lot farther than just the old Walmart. It wraps all the way up around David's Bridal. That part, that peak right there coming up right in the center in the front of the building, that's David's Bridal. It wraps all the way down and around all this. As you can see, it goes over to the other building and all the way down the building. Now, down here to the right, out of frame, hiding in the bushes, is a cop.
So that was pretty interesting. I hope you agree, and maybe again a little bit more eye-opening and a little bit more alarm ringing for you. But Sam Walton, the founder and chief of Walmart stores, was a U.S. intelligence officer during World War II and oversaw the mass detention of thousands of prisoners of war. Now, he didn't solely oversee the internment camps, as they were known in the United States, where they rounded up American citizens of Japanese origin who were considered enemy of the states during World War, and he was part of the officers or the team that oversaw this. And it is also very interesting because FDR used an executive order, and there it is in brackets, Executive Order 9066. We just mentioned, or I just mentioned rather, a little short while ago. Star Wars, Emperor Palpatine during Revenge of the Sith execute Executive Order 66, the execution and extermination of the Jedi, removing them from the galaxy and trying to erase their history. But the new order, the Executive Order 9066, was intended for the internment of the Japanese Americans living in the States during World War II, as I just mentioned. Thousands of Germans and also Italians were thrown into these camps, and Walton he who would go on to open up Walmart and become a global leader in the picture perfect poster boy of the American dream, where one man can accomplish anything if he just puts his mind to it, or if he's certainly helped along by the government with subsidies in sort of had a bit of a military background. It's almost impossible not to succeed. But anyway, um, Japanese, Germans, and Italian American citizens were thrown into these intern camps during World War II. And are we about to see that again in the not so distant future, as FEMA are rolling into 11 major cities in order to set up, I think it's 11 major cities, in order to set up mass vaccination sites. And we just looked at some of the disturbing executive orders and powers that FEMA has. So is it any surprise then that since 2001, Walmart has received an estimated 50 to 100 billion dollars from the US government in tax breaks, land grants, and earmarks? While earmarks were temporarily limited by Congress, it is still believed that Walmart receives kickbacks. Why are they getting so much money from the government? Hint, it isn't to keep their prices low. Another fact I find suspicious is Walmart hiring of 130,000 veterans, active duty and reserve stroke National Guard troops. I want to be clear, I always support the wonderful military troops, as do I support military anywhere. Salute to anyone who has served. But giving them great jobs and an opportunity to succeed. But I do find Walmart's hiring of these soldiers unusual. The reason is because they laid off thousands of workers in America and shuttered 269 stores across the world because of financial problems and portfolio management. What if everything new about surviving the coming crisis was dead wrong? A video below. That isn't actually a video. It's an ad that looks like a video. I clicked on it. There's nothing to see there, folks. What is Walmart doing with its new army? Yet another fact is that that is highly unusual is the recent string of murders, attempted murders, arson, and other crimes that have happened on Walmart's premises. Many of these crimes sound more like drills or exercises. During one of these exercises in Amarillo, Texas, the police force notes 2 gunmen are in the store holding hostages. They said that one was Hispanic and another one was black. Remember, FEMA, those are who they're going after first, the Hispanics and the black Americans. But it was then this was modified to one being an Arab Islamic terrorist and then modified again to an episode of workplace violence. This mirrors problems in the stores of San Bernardino County. I actually once lived in for a while, and reports of 3 shooters, and in Orlando, Florida, report of 2 of 3 offenders, then modified by police reports. Are these events, exercises, or drills being carried out by the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, for whom Maintain conveniently worked as a contractor? Another scary fact is the level of cooperation through the years between the government and Walmart. It is known that Walmart worked with the Department of Defense on integrating RFID throughout their supply chain. They also worked with the DHS to report suspicious persons on their premises. This was in the aftermath of 9/11, and then very coincidentally enough, on the second day of the pandemic, the day after then President Donald Trump announced that we were going into effective global pandemic status. The very, very next day, it was the CEO of Walmart and the CEO of Target, funny enough, that the President Trump at the time chose to join him in the White House outside the building and address the nation and told everybody that Walmart would play their part in the proceedings towards flattening the curve. But also, the United States government has hired several people into FEMA and disaster readiness position. All the elite want is more security, more ways to track and monitor you, more ways to make you less threatening to them. Example, gun control. And Walmart is currently working with Omar Mateen, a former employer called G4S, on a project that will change their entire payment system in stores. And there's another ad that we're not going to click on about. Remember that RFDIs are now legal. I don't think they are. That's a little bit of clickbait, I think. But the G45 company is the largest security company in the world and working in hand with the largest corporation on the world. And it is the third largest employer in the world behind Walmart at number one. So this is a little bit of an example of corporate dictatorship, the militarized industrial complex. This is what these we refer to in these. These are the largest corporations on the world that are sort of militarizing themselves and acting in accordance or maybe even against governments to overpower the federal government or help the federal government transform or transition into a militarized state. But they're the two largest companies in the world, and this company in particular, G45, is involved in cybersecurity and cyber data and is active in almost every country in the world. What isn't as well known is G45 interest in RFID technology for tracking people all around the world. They filed a patent back in 2011 for tamper-resistant RFID chip device to be worn on the hand or the wrist that tracks people into prisons. I find Walmart's recent cooperation with G45 very unusual. But in conclusion, there is strong evidence to link Walmart to the US government, either as an entity operating in the private sector or is in close cooperation. And here is another video that we are gonna watch right now.
Shelter here. Why are you outside during this entire hurricane?
Well, I chose not to go inside yesterday because the Salvation Army and Russian Wind's homeless shelter, where they were accepting people, were caught killing everybody that was in there.
I'm at the neighborhood Walmart in San Jose, California. This is what it has become. I did not want to believe it, but it's happening. Does this look like your friendly neighborhood Walmart to you?
Hey, America, everybody needs to stand up for their rights and demand. What the fuck are they doing up here?
There's a storm coming and it can't be stopped. FEMA camps are being prepped in every major city. Superstores are being turned into death factories surrounded by razor wire. Mass graves are being set up across the country. These sites will become the final resting place for millions of Americans. So why isn't the news talking about this? What happens when you put FEMA camps and mass graves together? You get genocide. They are preparing a genocide, ladies and gentlemen. The footage doesn't lie. When are people going to wake up? People are seeing these death camps go up across the country. What you're looking at here isn't about Republican versus Democrat. It isn't about black versus white. It's about mass murder. And everybody out there is going to be a future victim. The ruling elite have made the situation perfectly clear. You are going to be eliminated. One way or another, they are coming for you. Today, it's a silent war. They're poisoning the food, the air, the water. But in the days to come, this war is going hot. And when it does, they've got the infrastructure in place for a genocide. Everyone knows the end is near. They can see it for themselves. And this is what's going on in every major city. One way or another, this cult of death is going to make the Georgia Guidestones happen. Now, some people out there are clinging to the dream that somehow they'll be on the winning team. Repeat after me. You are not the 1%. You will not survive what's coming unless you begin waking up everyone around you. Quit letting the television control control your mind. These people on television are not going to save you. Not one of them is talking to you about what you're looking at here. Instead, they're trying to divide us by selling us lies while plotting our demise. You've been living a dream, Neo, and that dream is about to become a nightmare. Companies like Google are about to spawn AI, Skynet, Terminators, and the like. It's going to be Judgment Day, and it's going to catch everyone by surprise. The TV is not your friend. They're selling you lies while plotting your demise. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
In reluctant opposition to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, which we'll be voting on today. The bill does include provisions that are vital to our national defense, but it also includes provisions that present a false choice between our safety and our values. Section 1021 would authorize the indefinite military detention of all terrorism suspects, allowing the United States to detain an individual, some of whom may be innocent, without charge or trial, to detain an individual, some of whom may be innocent, without charge or trial, to detain an individual, some of whom may be innocent, without charge or trial during this endless war on terrorism, undermines our most defining principles as a nation of individual freedom and justice for all.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
A bunch of them in the ground already. That's what they all do.
interesting stuff. I did cut that a little bit short for you guys because it did drag on a little bit long with just walking around what looks like the mass grave site there. Make of it what you will. But that is the end of that article, and I'm not sure if or not that was the individual that wrote it. Not a bad looking lady there with the smoky eye makeup and the fancy eyebrows. But guys, Walmart, Fema, you've seen some evidence. We've looked at some articles. We've seen the exact extent of the power Fema has to deploy at its whim under, emergency guidelines in all the executive orders they've got, really and truly, to create, as I said, a totalitarian dictatorship of their whims and wills and wishes. So stay tuned. We will be returning to the thrift store studio soon, where Reality Decoded Live will recommence. If you are watching this in a rerun on TSP TV, then this is the end of the show. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Be sure to make sure you subscribe to Reality Decoded, and you will be able to enjoy these presentations live and as they happen, and participate with the members in the live chat. But as I said, guys, we will be seeing you momentarily back at the thrift store studio. One last little article we're going to look at before we finish up here, guys, is this one: brown shirts pushing rhetoric at Walmart. Let's close that shit there if I can. Never mind. Walmart Center, and there we are, Walmart, and you can change it into martial law. Look, if you rearrange the wall into LAW, you've got marked law. Enjoy or make of that what you will. But since when, and the reason I'm reading this is kind of a little bit contemporary in regards to COVID and the virus and the quarantine, and trying to sort of build this all back to where we started, to the fact that FEMA are rolling in to major cities to set up their mass vaccination sites. So anyway, since when has it been that you quarantine the healthy instead of just the sick? Medical procedures call for the quarantine of the sick for 14 days, not the entire population. What you are seeing is not to protect the population, but to train and control them, as we found out yesterday in the Tavistock touch. It is also designed to cause psychological damage to all the individuals affected by this. But the wearing of the mask has no protection, even by their own admissions, to the actual size of the viruses. The masks being used today would be of no help. Masks are just a poll for the controllers to see who is following the propaganda, to see if the sheeple are ready to give up wearing a mask for maybe a vaccine. And this is what I've been talking to you about quite a lot recently, that, it's all part of the plan there, that those that comply and those that are being encouraged into non-compliance might be the ones that are going to be targeted in maybe the first populace of these possible, probable FEMA concentration camps. But a tag vaccine that couldn't be faked, one that couldn't be scanned by a device easily to see. If you're allowed to be in public, no vaccine, no travel, no groceries, no nothing. Totally controlled about them. But what about the genetic altering that can be inserted into that vaccine, just like the farmers' crops being owned by patents due to changing the seed's genetic structure? Maybe people will be able, maybe people will be patentable after the vaccine changes in their DNA, no longer having a godly created DNA that is not patentable, but now Microsoft 060606 patentable GMO DNA will the term GMPS, genetically modified people that have no rights to their own body anymore, be a thing of the future. We've got GMOs, genetically modified organisms, genetically modified people, transhumanism, maybe plugging us in. Elon Musk is talking about his nanochips. Nothing new. He's been this kind of nanotechnology has been on the cards for a little while now. The submergence to transhumanism might be something we have to address at some point in a not so distant future, because it kind of does fall a little bit into the the virtual reality sort of theories in Syndrome. But never, what does that do to your godly origin and natural rights? Sounds like Revelations with the mark of the beast. And here is a little video of a poor guy trying to feed his family by getting abused in a grocery.
Well, you gotta wear a mask, bro. Bro, these folks is tripping, bro. Hey, sir, everybody got on masks, man. Everybody got on masks, man. You want a mask, man? I got some. Bro, this is too funny, bro. Poor thing, man. Look, he got a look at him, bro. Bro, the man doing his job, bro. Just get a mask.
There you go. That was an interesting little video of the Walmart Nazis trying to deny entry to someone without a mask, although not very successfully because the man did manage to walk in. Now, I'm not entirely sure if all of these sort of Walmart mask videos, and we've seen a few of these sort of videos circulating of Karen-type individuals attacking people for not wearing masks, and if or not these are not staged, pre-planned, pre-recorded, behind closed doors. As you can kind of see, there's not many people in that Walmart, although social distancing, social gathering, all that stuff is restricted. So let's look again at this little video, 2 minutes, and we will is there much more of this article? Yeah, a few bit more pieces, but let's watch another video, give you a break from my voice again. It is only a couple of minutes long.
Because that's a great spend of tax.
I could hear the yelling, and I'm like, what is going on?
Bobby Karn was shopping in the Turlock Walmart yesterday when she saw officers escorting a man and 2 children out of the store. She says the manager called police because the kids weren't wearing masks and the man refused to leave.
Yes, the children should have had masks on, but as a manager, I think you should have handled it better.
In her video, you can see a Turlock police officer walk over and explain what's happening.
If they refuse to leave the store, then they would be considered trespassing.
All we ask is that you practice safe COVID-19 requirements.
Turlock Police Chief Nino Amirfar took to Facebook Live today, explaining the department's policy for enforcing the new statewide mandate to wear a mask.
We will not be citing people for not wearing face masks. That's very clear.
Instead, the chief says officers will respond if a business wants to press trespassing charges against a person who refuses to put on a mask, then refuses to leave.
However, if that business refuses to serve you and asks you to leave, you should leave. If you refuse to leave, that business will require us to respond for trespassing.
The chief says he will make sure the business is prepared to file trespassing charges before sending officers. Bobby Karn, who recorded part of the interaction inside Walmart, says she feels the manager could have handled the situation better.
But the fact with everything going on and the way things are in this world, that you would want somebody arrested over the kids not wearing masks is insane to me.
Emily Maha.
We've lost connection there, and I won't play the rest of the video. But nevertheless, guys, you get the picture that people are starting to criminalize people who wear masks, who don't wear masks, rather, and they are becoming targets and enemies of the state under trespassing laws. But yes, just propaganda now. But don't put it past them to false flag an event, or even worse, to keep their control. And the writer goes on to say, I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of people under the pretense of taking care of them. Thomas Jefferson said that, actually, not the writer. Thomas knew what he was talking about, huh? But remember, in 2013, Congress passed legislation allowing the federal government to fund and create propaganda they knew could be used to manipulate Americans on American soil. This legislation was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. And that is why we have seen a rise. Oh, look, there's a little poo emoji there. Ship Video Productions for you. How's that for a little bit of artificially intelligent algorithmic placed clickbait for me. But there you go. We've seen a little bit of guys getting turfed out of Walmart. Here we are a little bit later into the proceedings of this. This was back from June of last year. We are in February of 2021. No sign or end in sight to these COVID-19 pandemic bylaws. State of emergencies are declared around the world. There are emergency powers in place. How long is it going to be before that emergency power is finally in the hands of FEMA? And with all those executive orders at their disposal, they can go crazy with totalitarianism. So that was it, guys. Let's wrap this up now. The feature presentation part is pretty much over, but I did just want to add that one little article before we finished up here. I don't know if or not it was of interest to you or added any more information or not to tonight's presentation, but we'll find out right now when we do head back to the studio. So see it really soon.
The world will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
My apologies, guys. I've just been talking to myself for the last minute. I didn't realize I put I hadn't put the mic back on. Let me know if you can hear me. Give me a sound check and let me know if it's loud and clear. But I was saying to myself, as I didn't realize you weren't listening, we are about halfway through this FEMA Friday Frenzy, part of Ship Video Productions efforts to bring you all the facts and information you probably can. And it is a bit of a sort of special event today. We started at 4:20 over on the Shit Show, bringing you about 3.5 hours of contemporary information on FEMA goings on. And as we just heard, this part of the previous presentation that we just saw is part of this double feature here at Reality Decoded, part of FEMA Friday. Was from 2021, February 2021, and some of that information that was contained in that first part of this double bill seems even more relevant today. So the audio is good. It's like Highlander. What were you talking about there, Marduk? What's like Highlander? Good to see you, buddy. Glad you could join us and the other regular offenders as we spend this Friday together, spending quality time researching FEMA. And I did say before we started that presentation, it's probably not going to be enjoyable, and it is going to get a little bit darker, and I do believe it is going to get a little bit darker in part 2. So I did want to give some of you, if you want, a quick little breather from absorbing facts. Maybe sort of take yourself for a comfort break if you need to. Top up your beverage, roll another fatty if that's what you need, rack up a line, whatever you need to do in order to get you through the second part of this double feature. Now would be the time to do so, as I try and pay attention to a couple of comments. If anyone's got anything of interest they wanted to add that they saw through that first part. And it is a very strange experience for me to have such a lit chat over here at Reality Decoded. Sometimes the live chat is like crickets, and you know, with only sometimes a handful of people watching, it is hard to generate some interaction. But again, this has been one of those sort of streams, as previously this afternoon, it's been hard for me to catch up with, and certainly as a solo operator, which is a little bit strange after the sort of last few weeks of co-hosting with my beautiful and wonderful partner in crime, Al Sweet Cheeks 78. So it is a little bit sort of strange, as I said, to sort of be a lone streamer, and it is also a little bit of a strange experience for me here at Reality Decoded to have such so many comments and such great feedback coming in thick and fast. It's hard to keep track of, so excuse me. Indeed it is, and you're going to notice it's starting ramping up. Well, unfortunately, Marduke, we missed you in the first part of the FEMA Friday proceedings at the shit show, and it really is ramping up faster than you could possibly imagine. And if you got a chance to go back and backtrack and check that previous stream out, I mean, we is the minute that, I mean, even before that stream ended, this stream begun, and sort of the viewers and there is clearly, obviously, a thirst for knowledge regarding FEMA, because I mean, we've got 11 folks watching now. We had about 15, 16 watching before, so the majority of people that tuned in this afternoon are still here and still hanging on to the information that is being presented to you. And for me, this you can't even begin to know how rewarding it is to sort of finally have research and information I put together actually resonate with the audience that we're watching. And you know, I've had some viewers in the past, I'm not sort of dissing or calling anybody out, but Marduke will agree with me. He's one of the longer regular offenders here, and maybe Tuna, I don't know, but we did have one particular viewer that used to be a regular offender, who I've mentioned a few times in that stream you've just watched, who really just communicated in emojis, which doesn't really tell me anything, or doesn't tell me nothing, if you know what I mean. So it is wonderful. So rather than telling you how great it is, let's actually pay a little bit more attention to some of these comments. Lou Faringo, I talked about this with others. Interesting, you understand what I meant by one word. It must be real, Marduke. That was something you and Marduke were chatting about, I think, in the chat. And somebody mentioned something about checking a couple of video games out. I'm not much of a gamer. My sort of gaming experiences come from sort of Atari and ColecoVision in the ZX Spectrum 48K. And, you know, I have owned PlayStations in the past, but I'm not really much of a gamer. 3 a.m. to get smokes sucks. Don't miss smoking. I do. I've missed smoking from 15 minutes ago. That feeling you get when you can sense another awakened soul, kind of like a disturbance in the force, perhaps, Marduk, something like that. That was another thing we were sort of chatting about on our Sunday session in the Ancient Aliens. Funny enough, as you're here, and Al is here, we want to get you back as a guest caller, or guest host rather than a guest caller, and we want you to lead the proceedings on a Planet X, and because you've got a lot of knowledge on that stuff. I'm sure our viewers would love to hear. The sixth sense, yeah, some animals in that have sixth senses. In insects, and maybe, you know, humanity once upon a time had a sixth sense of its own, but it's been sort of bred out of us. We've been domesticated. We sort of don't live according to our species, and all the sort of toxins in food, medicines, even the sort of air that we breathe and the water that we drink isn't free from contaminants that I'm sure is making us less according to how we are naturally supposed to exist, in more in accordance to how the powers to be want us to exist or cease to exist, as the sort of case may be. And as I said, there's a lot of dark and disturbing content in that stream and about to come regarding this. And you know, there was another comment that did stand out to me from Denise, whichever way she prefers it. I'll call her double-barreled, just so that I cover both bases there. But she said, you know, this is a sort of information that people really don't know, and sort of part of my crusade in purpose as a sort of YouTuber and is the CEO of Shit Video Productions, is to sort of bring you information that you don't hear anywhere else. Although I'm not saying you won't hear this information anywhere else. Obviously it is out there, because I had to find the information to sort of put it together, but there are very few, and a lot of the information that you just saw in that stream, you won't be able to find that very easily anymore. And I would sort of almost suggest, if you can screen record this presentation for prosperity, I think that's something Marduke said, we need to start hard recording stuff, you might want to do. And if you sort of have any friends that are a little bit dubious or on the fence, direct them to this stream, direct them to the shit show stream earlier, because this is stuff I really think you need to be paying attention to. Forget the Epstein fucking client list. There is no Epstein client list. This isn't a distraction to stop them presenting the Epstein. The Epstein list is a distraction. The COVIDs, the vaccines, the masks, the World Health Organization, they are the red herring guys. They're keeping everybody occupied with what they're going on. And all the time, Fema, the true power to be, the power, the organization that has the power to take over the United States, that has the executive orders pre-signed to do so, is creating something. They are already in place. They have emergency presence right now in Ohio. They have emergency presence in Southern California. These vaccine sites still exist. They weren't put up for vaccines. They were put up for something else. The quarantine camps, you know, not just in America. I've got information from the Canadian government itself talking about the quarantine camps up there. I've got government issued PDFs from the province of Alberta for employees and managers that are going to be overseeing and working at labor workforce camps. This isn't conspiracy. This isn't from basement dwelling YouTubers. This is, as we said earlier, from the horse's mouth. It's gonna happen, people. They don't spend the money, they don't go to the lengths to put all of this stuff into position, into place, not to use it. We've got the National Guard deployed domestically within the United States assisting Fema. We have hundreds and hundreds of empty Walmarts, even more now than when we saw in those footage. There was some of it over 10 years ago. This has been planned for long times, guys, and from what the evidence and all the pieces that are in place in current times, it looks as though something is coming. I can't tell you that with 100% assurance. I don't know what is coming, but judging from FEMA's history, judging from their script book, they're in place ready for something big. And they just a few weeks ago did a drill called Frosty Force, a multi-state natural disaster scenario. So with that being said, guys, if you've all got yourself resituated, let me just look at a couple of comments before we recommence. Maiden, Montana, one of the OG regular offenders and one of the OG wench wrenches from back in the days of TSP TV. Seems a long time ago now. I would be more original Christian as taught by the Gnostics. Okay, you guys are having a little chat in there about something else, but that's quite alright. L, my partner in crime, I hear you, great RD, on the screen, I see, not you, FY. No, I'm sort of not going on screen at the moment. I'd have to sort of take away the presentation and bring it back, and we might not be able to start where we left off from, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm coming back to chat. The mic is coming off, guys. Get ready for the second part of this evening's double feature as part of Shit Video Productions FEMA Friday. And if you lucky people are really, really lucky, and if you really, really want to, I'm not sure if or not, my partner in crime would be willing to set up an after stream party over on the Shit Show, where we can just come out and hang out for the remainder of Friday evening. Let me know in the comments below, sweet cheeks. Let me know if you can let that happen, and who knows, we may even able to pull off a 12-hour Shit Video Production FEMA Friday. That is quite the task. I'm almost on board to do it. It's like a telethon. Can we do it? 12-hour impromptu stream? Comments below. I'll shut up now. Mic's coming off. Double feature restarting. Pay attention.
YouTube community, I'd like to show you this.
Of all terrorism suspects.
Legislation allowing the federal government to fund and create propaganda they knew could be used to manipulate Americans on American soil. This legislation was called the Monitorization.
3mm. We also noted the presence of lightning. You're seeing that now, which indicates confirmation. This was a nuclear explosion. There's no question.
My apologies, guys. Technical difficulties. A slip of a finger fucked me up, and I did the exact thing I didn't want to do. I'm going to try and line it up where we were before and centralize the video. Technical difficulties, but this is Shit Video Productions, and it is Shit Video Productions for a reason.
But now Microsoft 060606 patentable GMO DNA will turn GMPs, genetically modified people that have no rights to their own body anymore, be a thing of the future. We've got GMOs.
In her video, you can see a Turlock police officer walk over and explain what's happening.
If they refuse to leave the store, then they would be considered trespassing.
All we ask is that you practice safe COVID-19 requirements.
Turlock Police Chief Nino Amirfar took to Facebook Live today, explaining the department's policy for enforcing the new statewide mandate to wear a mask.
We will not be citing people for not wearing face masks. That's very clear.
Instead, the chief says officers will respond if a business wants to press trespassing charges against a person who refuses to put on a mask, then refuses to leave.
However, if that business refuses to serve you and asks you to leave, you should leave. If you refuse to leave, that business will request us to respond for trespassing.
The chief says he will make sure the business is prepared to file trespassing charges before sending officers. Bobby Karn, who recorded part of the interaction inside Walmart, says she feels the manager could have handled the situation better.
But the fact with everything going on and the way things are in this world, that you would want somebody arrested over the kids not wearing masks is insane to me.
Emily Maha.
We've lost connection there, and I won't play the rest of the video. But nevertheless, guys, you get the picture that people are starting to criminalize people who wear masks, who don't wear masks, rather, and they are becoming targets and enemies of the state under trespassing laws. But yes, just propaganda now. but don't put it past them to false flag an event, or even worse, to keep their control. And the writer goes on to say, I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of people under the pretense of taking care of them. Thomas Jefferson said that, actually, not the writer. Thomas knew what he was talking about, huh? But remember, in 2013, Congress passed legislation allowing the federal government to fund and create propaganda they knew could be used to manipulate Americans on American soil. This legislation was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. And that is why we have seen a rise. Oh, look, there's a little poo emoji there. Ship Video Productions for you. How's that for a little bit of artificially intelligent algorithmic placed clickbait for me? But there you go. We've seen a little bit of guys getting turfed out of Walmart. Here we are a little bit later into the proceedings of this. This was back from June of last year. We are in February of 2021. No sign or end in sight to these COVID-19 pandemic bylaws. State of emergencies are declared around the world. There are emergency powers in place. How long is it going to be before that emergency power is finally in the hands of FEMA? And with all those executive orders at their disposal, they can go crazy with totalitarianism. So that was it, guys. Let's wrap this up now. The feature presentation part is pretty much over, but I did just want to add that one little article before we finished up here. I don't know if or not it was of interest to you or added any more information or not to tonight's presentation, but we'll find out right now when we do head back to the studio. So see it really soon.
The world will look up and shout, save us. And I'll whisper, no.
Overseas without a trial. But what about targeting people on U.S. soil? Can they now kill American citizens inside the country? The head of the FBI, when asked about that on Capitol Hill yesterday, stumbled around on this.
Does that only apply to U.S. citizen that's overseas, or does that apply to U.S. citizen that's here?
I'd have to go back. I'm not certain whether that was addressed or not.
So that we have clarity here, he is not certain whether it was addressed, whether our government can kill our own people inside our own country. This really needs to be addressed. We can't just answer this question. No, the government doesn't kill our own people. We have a process for this. It's called the justice system. You file charges, you lock them up, you try them before a jury of their peers, and then that's how they don't kill our own people.
Now to a controversial bill resurfacing in Congress. The Fema camp bill allows the government to run at least 6 military installations when a national emergency is declared. These emergency centers would be run by FEMA under the command of the Secretary of Homeland Security. So this legislation is meant to be enacted in the event of an emergency. But what exactly does that mean? what is the definition of emergency, especially when it comes to this legislation? When would it be enacted?
Sure. We have to go back to 1988 to the Stafford Act bill to actually get the definition of emergency. And this covers things like tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, natural disasters. But it also gives the president to declare an emergency to avert a catastrophe, which raises the issue of preemptiveness.
Okay. But this also, this is, the goal here is to mobilize resources to have this plan to prevent a tragedy from happening, but also a reaction to it, right?
Yes, a reaction, and that's where some of the concerns for civil liberties activists comes in, because it's a slippery slope. Once the government has this power and all these centers are set up, and it's at least 6, maybe more, probably more, there is a real potential for the abuse of power here.
Okay, interesting. You know, we have this map that shows how the U.S. would be divided in the event of an emergency, if we can pull that up there. There it is. So this is how the U.S. will be divided into districts. You see 10 of them there. This is according to the National Emergency Center establishment. Can you describe what this map is? What exactly does that mean? I mean, it doesn't really make sense in terms of states as we know them. What is this classification system?
Sure.
What are the purposes?
It doesn't look like the map that you and I saw in elementary school.
Not at all.
Effectively, the U.S. has been cordoned off into these different districts. And so these new emergency centers will be spread out throughout the United States in most of these eventually. And it gives FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over what goes on in these places during a time of emergency.
Okay, I want to go into because this act does make some specific examples, some exclusions, set some limitations, I should say. So the National Emergency Center Establishment Act, what it does not do, it does not authorize any federal officer or employee to force an individual to enter a national emergency center or prevent an individual from leaving a national emergency center. So, Bob, it looks to me like there are some safeguards there. If you don't like it, you can leave.
Well, I'd like to think so. And this was actually one of the other things that was changed in this new version of the bill. They added this. But if you read what they're saying, you know, federal officer or federal employee, that doesn't cover members of the military. And since these are going to be installed in decommissioned and existing military bases, you're going to have people from the military there. So I would think they will have people, namely in the military, who would be able to force people to stay there or prevent them from leaving if that is what they want to do.
Well, we have our big vehicle out here. It's our armored vehicle. It's an AMRAP vehicle. It's mine resistant, ambush protected is what it stands for. The team commander, which is myself, I'll stand in the AMRAP and provide overwatch for the team while they're making entry into the house. We have gun ports in here, so we can actually shoot from within the vehicle. You may think it's pretty loud, but actually it's not too bad. But we do have gun ports there and in the back, and then two on the side as well.
There are some people who say, you know, this is another sign that the U.S. government is preparing for some sort of mass civil unrest.
The last time the federal government claimed that it could kill Americans was in the Civil War. And even Lincoln said it could only be done during combat. This federal government, this administration says it can kill Americans when they're riding with their children in a car in a desert.
And the right side of the road was filled with, which I thought was portable toilets. I never looked at them that close. Same in color, maybe black, but which was an odd color. And I was sitting there going over my notes, and a van pulled alongside of me that turned out to be the property owner. And he greeted me, and he was by himself, and so we had a good little dialogue there, and I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia that knew about them. and he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. And he says there's 100, at that time, he said there was 125,000 there. And they were stacked, he told me, 15 high. I asked him who owned them, and he stated that the CDC owned them and that they were leasing his land for storage. And he said his brother worked with the CDC in Atlanta and had been asked by the CDC to do a 3-year extension to place temporary morgues all across the nation.
Of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
The U.S. has been cordoned off into these different districts, and so these new emergency centers will be spread out throughout the United States in most of these eventually, and it gives FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over what goes on in these places during a time of emergency.
Following the latest volley of attacks on the Syrian regime, and these rumors state that the Syrian President Bashar Assad will soon officially declare war on Israel. Now, many are dismissing these reports as strictly rumor. There is also speculation about the nature of this morning's attack, with some insisting that Israel's weaponry was nuclear-like.
Reviewing a film of what appears to be a nuclear weapon being exploded near Damascus. We're doing a confirmation on this. You're watching the explosion now, and we're checking this against the scale of smaller artillery, 155 and 203 millimeter. We also noted the presence of lightning. You're seeing that now, which indicates confirmation. This was a nuclear explosion. There's no question.
You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
Under the rubric of terror, the government has stripped us of our civil liberties.
Obama didn't wake up and say, I want to see all Americans and find out what they're doing. This is something that came from the Defense Department or the Department of Justice.
Well, the Defense Department is not permitted to do anything in the United States of America against American citizens without an executive order from the president, and he can only issue one in time of rebellion or national disaster. That's the federal law. For him to permit the Air Force to spy on us, no matter how noble their goal may be, is a violation of federal law, unless he signed an executive order and we don't know about it, in which case that would be unlawful because the executive orders of this nature have to be public.
And other places. And I think you're going to still see the evolution of DHS unless we stop this monster. That's why we have people like Napolitano telling us that we're going to have DHS briefs at our local Walmart and our local stores at these telescreens to be worried about terrorism and spy on their neighbors. And that's why these memos are leaking again and again and again, because people who are not only in these departments but work with this department are leaking this to the public because they know it's out of control and wrong.
Let's get back to the breaking news right now. The Washington Post and The Guardian reporting the U.S. government is now also tapping directly into the central servers of 9 leading internet companies, including Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, AOL, Skype, YouTube, and Apple. The newspaper has just released new information to back up their reporting. Tom Foreman is here taking a closer look. What's the latest?
This information is really stunning, Wolf, when you consider it. A first-hand experience with these systems and horror at their capabilities is what drove a career intelligence officer to provide PowerPoint slides about PRISM and supporting materials to the Washington Post in order to expose what he believes to be a gross intrusion on privacy. Quote, they quite literally can watch your ideas form as you type, the officer said. Now let's look at some of these slides here, Wolf, that were from this presentation, because they really are quite surprising. This is the overview slide. You'll notice at the bottom the date there, April 2013, very recent. Now look at what this thing is all about. If you move to the next slide here, you can see that they're talking in here about how communications flow from place to place on systems like Google and Yahoo, that they're apparently, according to this program, monitoring. And now look at the next part here. What is being monitored? This is the part that will most get people's attention. Look at that. There are the companies over there on the left, but what they're allegedly able to look at is email, chats, videos, photos, stored data, video conferencing, all sorts of things that people would have thought were private, that were just on their desktop. This is what is certainly going to put people up in arms to some degree, Wolf, because you look at that, plus look at the data agreements here that they made with these different companies. There are the dates there. If you look side to side, they're a little hard to see. You see at the bottom 2007 up to 2013. That's the timeline of how they entered into this program with all of these companies that virtually all of us rely on all the time. Again, reporting from The Guardian and The Washington Post suggesting that all the coverage today about cell phones looks like the tip of the iceberg. Here's this ultra-secret program called PRISM they're reporting on, which has been allowing the government to look in on the desktops of computer users, if this report is correct, and simply see what we're doing, who we're communicating with, the things we're writing, the video messages we're exchanging, all sorts of things that, again, many, many computer users thought were private.
Apparently, though, authorized by Congress and the Patriot Act, authorized by a judge with these foreign intelligence courts, authorized, obviously, by the President of the United States. We're going to have much more on this coming up. We'll see what's going on, but pretty shocking information.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii. I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer.
One of the things people are going to be most interested in trying to understand who you are and what you're thinking is there came some point in time when you crossed this line of thinking about being a whistleblower to making the choice to actually become a whistleblower. Walk people through that decision-making process.
When you're in positions of privileged access, like a systems administrator for these sort of intelligence community agencies, you're exposed to a lot more information on a broader scale than the average employee. And because of that, you see things that may be disturbing, but over the course of a normal person's career, you'd only see one or two of these instances. When you see everything, you see them on a more frequent basis. And you recognize that some of these things are actually abuses. And when you talk to people about them, in a place like this, where this is the normal state of business, people tend not to take them very seriously and, move on from them. But over time, that awareness of wrongdoing sort of builds up, and you feel compelled to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you're ignored, the more you're told it's not a problem. Until eventually you realize that these things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who is simply hired by the government.
Talk a little bit about how the American surveillance state actually functions. Does it target the actions of Americans?
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can, by any means possible, that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest. Originally, we saw that focus very narrowly tailored as foreign intelligence gathered overseas. Now, increasingly, we see that it's happening domestically. And to do that, the NSA specifically, targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default. It collects them in its system, and it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores them for periods of time, simply because that's the easiest, most efficient, and most valuable way to achieve these ends. So while they may be intending to target someone associated with a foreign government or someone that they suspect of terrorism, they're collecting your communications to do so.
Why should people care about surveillance?
Because even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded. And the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude, to where it's getting to the point you don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call. And then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
Have you given thought to what it is that the U.S. government's response to your conduct is, in terms of what they might say about you, how they might try to depict you, what they might try to do to you?
Yeah, I could be, rendered by the CIA. I could have people come after me, or any of their third-party partners. They work closely with a number of other nations. Or, they could pay off the triads, or, any of their agents or assets. We've got a CIA station just up the road in the consulate here in Hong Kong. And I'm sure they're going to be very busy for the next week. And that's a fear I'll live under for the rest of my life, however long that happens to be. You can't come forward against the world's most powerful intelligence agencies and be completely free from risk, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time. But at the same time, you have to make a determination about what it is that's important to you. And if living unfreely but comfortably is something you're willing to accept, and I think many of us are, it's the human nature. You can get up every day, you can go to work, you can collect your large paycheck for relatively little work against the public interest, and go to sleep at night after watching your shows. But if you realize that that's the world that you helped create, and it's going to get worse with the next generation and the next generation who extend the capabilities of this sort of architecture of oppression, you realize that you might be willing to accept any risk, and it doesn't matter what the outcome is, so long as the public gets to make their own decisions about how that's applied. The greatest fear that I have regarding the outcome for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of these disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society. But they won't be willing to take the risks necessarily to stand up and fight to change things, to force their representatives to actually take a stand in their interests. And the months ahead, the years ahead, it's only going to get worse until eventually there will be a time where policies will change, because the only thing that restricts the activities of the surveillance state are policy. Even our agreements with other sovereign governments, we consider that to be a stipulation of policy rather than a stipulation of law. And because of that, a new leader will be elected. They'll flip the switch, say that because of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to tonight's feature presentation, all about Fema, which at the time of recording I'm still a little bit uncertain is what we're going to title this stream, but nonetheless it will hopefully have a title by the time you get to watch this presentation. But we are talking a bit about Fema and following up a little bit from the Camp Fema walmartial law episode we did a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks back maybe. Also I uploaded it onto TSP TV, which was struck down after it almost got a couple of hundred views in the first hour or so of upload, which is a astonishing amount of views for TSP TV, certainly in that quick amount of time. But anyway, it was flagged in considered medical misinformation, even though he didn't really talk about any medical issues, more the executive order and the powers that FEMA exactly have to control the United States citizens. But here we are over at good old DuckDuckGo here on the Brave browser. And I just put a little search in, look for FEMA vaccination site. So Sunday, what is it, the 14th of March 2021. We will just have a little look down at the list of news articles from the last week or so regarding FEMA vaccination camps. So we will start off and come back with the first one and look at some of the pictures. They're very, very interesting. But here we go down a look in, and another one, Orlando FEMA mobile vaccination site, a Yahoo news article. No appointment needed at FEMA corona vaccine sites in Hillsborough and Polk County. Illinois Democrats stepped up pressure on FEMA to add vaccination sites. Young couple crowd. I don't know exactly how a young people crowd a Florida FEMA site in hopes of vaccination. New FEMA pop-up vaccination site opens in Apopka. FEMA to help Portsmouth meet vaccination needs at large-scale clinics starting Tuesday. Another one from Florida. Drive-up FEMA vaccine sites leaked wherever that was again. Lakefield. Stage set for 2 more South Floridian FEMA-supported vaccination camps. Easy access at Lakeland FEMA vaccination site. Large crowd expected at vaccination sites as the DeSantis lowers the age restriction. Another one there in Greenboro. FEMA starts community outreach on federally supported gateway COVID-19 vaccination sites. U.S. Republic Veronica Escobar, or sorry, I don't know what the app stars for there, but she prangs to bring a FEMA camp to El Paso, Florida again. They do like their camps in Florida, FEMA in Florida. Another one is set up in Cleveland, a mass vaccination site. Orlando FEMA camps needs to get your second COVID vaccine at the FEMA MDC North or pop-up site. How it works, again, 2 days ago. Jacksonville FEMA's handing out of United Center vaccine site there. You can see it goes on and on and on. And I believe in Atlanta, Georgia, they're using the big stadium down at the Mercedes Stadium, I believe. A lot going on in Florida, it would seem. Don't know why I'm getting Florida news. I am in Canada, quite away from Florida, but there it is, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Get a little bit of corporate sponsorship in there for your vaccination sites. FEMA mass vaccination sites open again in Orlando. Um, on and on and on and on. News after news after news after news after news about FEMA vaccination sites. So let's just go all the way back up to the top. And this one has some photographs from a Miami FEMA camp. And if not, these are staged photographs. We don't need that little pop-up or not. They may be using actors that are typecast for crisis situations, perhaps, if you know what I'm saying there. But there's a bunch of people waiting outside looking to go into the camp. It would seem some barriers and stuff there for you. FEMA COVID-19 vaccination sites in Miami photos. FEMA sponsored COVID-19 vaccination site at the Miami-Dade College North Campus. And SS, Susan Stocker, Caroline Jean, and Mike Stocker, I'm guessing, are the people who took this picture. So there's one individual, and he's wearing a sort of Floridian, is that a fedora hat? Let me know if that is a fedora. And he's rolling his sleeve up and getting a jab, and he's got some sort of bracelet on there. That yellow bracelet looks like it might be identification, perhaps. And another double barreled Dionzio Diaz gets his vaccination at the FEMA COVID-19 vaccination site on the March 10th, 21 at the above mentioned Miami-Dade College. And here are some pictures. Now, what you also might notice here that good old Dion was having his picture with somebody who looks like they might be a medical personnel. Just because they're wearing a white coat doesn't necessarily mean they are medically trained, but certainly looks the part, got gloves on and their little visor and mask while she's sticking the needle in her arm. She's making it very visible, because some pictures in the past of people getting vaccines have pointed out that the needle still had the cap on the end of it, so it wouldn't have penetrated the skin, and some people noticed that they weren't even sticking them in their arms. But as we go down to this picture, all of a sudden, what's going on here? That doesn't look like there's many medical staff. In fact, no, they almost look like military personnel in their camouflage fatigues there. Again, they do got the visors and masks, but military personnel, again, they might be military doctors. But bear in mind, this is FEMA, who are a federal emergency management agency. But this does, as again, looks like US military personnel. Do they have any identifying badges or marks on their uniforms that somebody might recognize? I don't know, but there they are, lining up with their vaccines. And again, more military, and there's a nice looking lady showing a little bit of shoulder going on there. Got herself a bit of a Farrah Fawcett hairstyle going on. And again, military personnel that it looks like she's talking to. Goodness gracious me, I'm pretty sure if you were a smackhead, those syringes would be worth their weight in gold too, but there's a whole bunch of them, look, with the orange tips on the end. More military personnel, what it looks like, giving injections to civilians. Don't know what that symbol is on the floor there. Maybe some kind of identifying mark. And I'm pretty sure the fact that it is in shot, it has some relevance to someone or something. Look on, let's get the token gesture of somebody in a wheelchair. I think that's an old gentleman at first. I thought it might have been a child. Or but maybe it's someone with Benjamin Button. And again, being pushed around by someone with what looks to be lots of military personnel. There is someone in the corner there with a white coat on. But I don't know if this is alarming to you guys, that they do seem to be a little bit more militaristic than medicalistic, if that's even a word. But you know what I'm saying? There's a girl, she's looking a little bit scared. Oh no, not the needle. But on and on it goes, and I think that is the picture that we started with. You know, there are some more pictures there of individuals lining up with their masks, ready to get their jabs. There's somebody, look, get the token picture of an individual with a baby. I'm pretty sure that poor individual might get a little bit of flack online because the baby doesn't have a mask on. Child abuse, though, I would think. People lining up there. COVID-19 vaccination there. Again, more pictures of people lining up. You know, a little bit what we said about Pokemon Go. Here they are. There's an individual. Don't know what that sign's saying there. Can anyone read that? No, that's a little bit too blurry. But on and on and on and on it goes about people having vaccinations, and again, more military jabbing somebody. But you get the picture, guys. Cold Box Express. Now that is very interesting that they've kind of put that in the background, because could that be like where they might store bodies, keep them cold so that they don't start to smell in the hot Floridian sun? Let me know thoughts and opinions if you think that the Cold Box Express was put in for a purpose. There's nothing by chance or coincidence with the deep state, folks. Remember that. Anyway, you get the picture. They got like a little bit of a marquee. Then you might see a wedding, make it a little bit visually aesthetical for the individuals, not look so death campy if you can possibly do that. And again, lots and lots of military personnel lining up on the streets, outside waiting to get their jabs. And we did see people out on the streets, but military guys. And I don't know who he is. He's a NFL draft picture. So getting the picture. Don't know if or not you guys, like me, find it a little bit scary that there's so many military personnel, it seems, in these pictures at these vaccination sites. But wait, what if I told you these vaccination sites have been put in place over 10 years ago, and also all of a sudden they're becoming active because the right crisis came along to issue and grant even more powers to keep us safe and protect us from harm? Stay tuned. We're going to find out that it was. To the Dave Hodges, the Common Sense Show, Freeing America, One Enslaved Mind at Time website. And the Common Sense Show is depicted to peaceful, non-violent social and political change. But anyway, this was an article that I think come out last year. February 18th, 2020. It is right there. And it says here, look inside the coming quarantine camps where you can check out, but you will never leave. And I was trying to think and work of a catchy title like Hotel COVID-fornia. Check out but never leave, or COVIDian Motel. I don't know. But this was submitted by Dave Hodges on Tuesday, February the 18th, 2020 at 1:46 a.m. it would seem, although we don't know if that's Eastern time. But bear in mind, guys, this was Tuesday, February the 18th, around a month before then President Donald Trump announced to the nation that we were under a global pandemic, and the 2 weeks to flatten the curve was enforced, which we're now about week 53 into. I'm not sure if the curve's flattened or not, but nearly a year ago, I reported that major media, this is Dave Hodges, was reporting that the United Nations began training the newly formed Mexican National Guard in brackets humanitarian activities, and as we now have the advantage of some retrospective consideration, it is clear it's clear that groups like the Mexican National Guard with UN oversight will be policing our soon to be medical martial law camps. With every stunning new detail that is presented in this article, please be mindful of this fact. At the end of this article, I challenge any reasonable person to not conclude that the United Nations is training, at least in part, the Mexican National Guard to serve in medical martial law FEMA camps, and it will not be for humanitarian purposes. A short while ago, I compared my work on the creation of quarantine camps or medical martial law camps, in brackets, with no medical provisions, and we just saw some pictures of people that seem to have more military look about them than they did medical look. But anyway, with no medical provisions, in brackets, with that of Celeste Solum. There were striking similarities. Subsequent, I went through the archives of the CSS and found more dramatic information which most likely underlines what is coming to America as the coronavirus is slowly gaining a foothold in the US. Again, this is pre the announcement of a global pandemic and pre all the sort of measures that have been put in place since that announcement. Just how serious is the coronavirus and its mutations? Again, 2021, we've got mutations and variants being reported that we didn't have at this time, at the time of this article being written. It is serious enough that we know enough about attempted secret meetings between the CDC, DOD, Fema, and the DHS. All the best alphabet agencies there for you collaborating together on this. But we know that quarantine zones are being set up, not planned, set up, as I write these words. However, what is coming is not dependent upon you hearing the latest rumor. It is contingent upon you staying vigilant, as well as now, as we well know, about executive orders. We looked at some of those draconian, tyrannical executive orders that are available to FEMA to be rolled out at any given time that they please. In War Martial Law Camp FEMA stream we did a couple of weeks ago. They are being, they're not being planned, set up. They are planned. They are being put in place, and they are now in 11 states. However, what is coming is not dependent. We read that. Staying vigilant as well. You know about executive orders and army protocols and legislation, which will govern what happens to millions of Americans when the corona crisis becomes undeniable in present time. It's pretty undeniable in our present time. Share if you agree, guys. As I write these words, and again, this is the words of Dave Hodges, not myself, the big tech companies, i.e. social media, are meeting with the CDC and WHO in an attempt to go all-out censorship with regard to coronavirus. Bear in mind, I did already mention that Camp FEMA War Martial Law, when I uploaded the presentation part to TSP TV, was censored. Make of that what you will. But soon you will only be reading and hearing about one viewpoint, and they will be providing you certain memetics that you can share and agree with, so they can use as data and analysis to decide whether or not you get to go to Camp COVID. But the view of the CDC, i.e. the part of the American deep state, and the WHO, i.e. the United Nations, what could go wrong? Probably nothing, guys. Nothing to worry about. They're just trying to keep us safe. Many of us who wrote about many of the policies that appear in this article, however, until the current crisis provided us with some contents, we could only apply the draconian nature of these policies in hypothetical means. Now we have the means to apply old knowledge with current events, and the events are so frightening that it will cause the strong of body hearts to fail them because of the gross inhumanity of what is coming. America is getting a front row seat on how genocide is rolled out, and the curtain is now just rolling back for the opening act. Now that we have the context policy, we can write the future, because my history book has already exposed this plot many times. I would suggest printing out a hard copy of this article. Why? Because we don't know how long the truth is going to be publicly available. Here is the truth as we understand the nature of the quarantine camps and the rules and the identities of those that will be running these camps. Please keep in mind that at least 11 quarantine areas have already been identified in anticipation of the coronavirus. Update March 2021, something we updated and highlighted in Camp FEMA War Martial Law, that currently in contemporary times FEMA are rolling in to 11 states to roll out their vaccination camps. 1 year ago, they were telling you to keep that in mind, that at least 11 quarantine areas have been identified in anticipation of coronavirus. Now, if or not those locations may be selected due to who people may or may not voted for, civil war, civil unrest, are they targeting those that were probably a little bit more pro-Trump, pre-Biden era, and now that Biden's in charge? Okay, Trumpists, we don't need you anymore. Off to the camps you go. Get yourself a nice vaccination. Oh, there's a bunch of you over there that shared and agreed with some Donald Trump memes a little bit excessively in the month of February 2021. Okay, we've got a special vaccination site for you. We just need you to follow the blue line, not the yellow line. Be sure to get your blue wristbands to make sure you get the blue vaccination. Hypothetical there, but bearing in mind all that we've been talking about, all that we've been looking about at in recent weeks with the controls and data analysis technology that we carry around with us, all the electromagnetic frequencies and radio waves and stuff that can breed our minds, all the suggestive, manipulative memes that we share and agree with are tools of manipulation, and they are tools of data collection. They are doing recon on us, guys. That is what the first year of the corona was all about, doing a recon, looking who's happy to comply and share and agree with the ideology of the new world that is being rolled out in front of us. And those of us who may be a little bit stuck in the past may want to hold on to the illusion of liberty and freedom that we once had. We may already have been targeted. But despite the fact, back to the article, that there is overwhelming documentation regarding the existence of FEMA camps, some people steadfastly refuse to acknowledge the existence of FEMA camps, and in brackets, concentration camps. The documentation dates back to as far as the 1980s, and in recent times, the documents which became known as FM 39.4 took center stage with regard to the guide for the incarceration of political undesirables. And remember, that's what in the early days of the Trump candidacy campaign for the presidency, you were labeled, if you supported Trump, you were labeled an undesirable. Bearing in mind they want to incarcerate political undesirables. Bear that in mind, guys. Make of it what you will. Not telling us what's going to happen, just providing you some information that could suggest you might need to be a little bit aware of what might be coming your way soon. And bearing in mind, some of these FEMA camps are in the states that you are watching me in right now. Although I'm not in those states. I'm in Canada, Toronto, Canada. But some of you are in places like Texas and Colorado and such forth that may or may not have a local FEMA camp close to you. Maybe the memes that you share and agree with might be your death sentence, folks. But as I said, they have the regard to the incarceration of political undesirables, and there was the stories of the coffins and the FEMA guillotines and all shit that was going around 2015 2016, and this is sort of what suddenly started opening my mind, my eyes a little bit wider, and like, holy shit, something's coming. All of this is getting put into place for something, and here we are in the midst of the something 1 year into the PSYOP COVIDian nightmare that we now live in as our normality. But through the years, the author has reported extensively on the existence of these camps, and this article is not a rehash of existence of FEMA camps. Rather, this article is an examination expressed in two-part series in which a good cause can be made that the United Nations is training a newly formed Mexican National Guard to implement martial law on American soil, and with many of the troops manning the FEMA camp facilities under UN auspices, and how do you say that? Auspices, as provided under. Sorry, let's start that again. The Mexican Guards are being trained for deployment on American soil, with many of their troops manning the FEMA camp facilities. Under the UN watchful eye, let's just say that because I can't read that word, as provided for under Army Field Manual on Internment and Resettlement, aka 39 FM 39.4, Field Manual on Internment and Resettlement. The purpose of this series is to provide a more detailed look about what will accompany the quarantine camps, medical martial law camps in brackets, by linking what is known to what we are learning. Demographics report obtained in my analytics tells me that over 70% of the people visiting my website are new to the site. Subsequently, I have decided to present this material in two parts. The first part of this series, I felt it necessary to re-establish the proof the FEMA camp exists and foreign troops will occupy them. In addition, FM 39.4 will demonstrate that these camps are thinly disguised concentration camps with all the intended and traditional features of a death camp. So let's just go back and click on that for you there, if we will be able to get it up. And it is a PDF that you are downloaded. FM 390 Internment and Resettlement Operations, February 2010, 11 years ago, guys. And there is, what does that say? Distribution authorized to the DOD and DOD contractors only to protect. God, that is getting very blurry. Only to protect technical or operational information from automatic dissemination under the International Exchange Program or by other means. This determination was made on the 8th of December 28, and other requests for the document must be referred to the Commandant U.S. Army Military Police School, ATTN ATZT TDDM 320, Manson Loop, Suite 270, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Blah blah blah. Destruction notice: destroy by any method that will prevent disclosure or consent to or reconstruction of the document. So again, make of this what you will. This could, I'm not trying to pull a hot musket on you here, guys. This could also very well be a falsified document made to look like an actual thing, but it's got 325 units to it. Pages, so we're only on page 4. Trust me, we're not going to be going and looking at all of them. But let's go down and look at least maybe get to 10, and you can kind of just read for yourself as we scroll down. Handling evidence biometrics, something figure 1.1, populations, detainee flow, movement, aircraft, blah 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 blah. So detainee operations, functional overview, 9 station internment process. That's what I'm saying, the 9 stations. Maybe that be for people who with a particular political view, or maybe people of a particular race or ethnicity might be different things. Field manual, the military police, keystone, stuff like this, going on and on. All very draconian, guys. As I said, I'm not going to read it all. It's very, very small, and 325 pages. God, how long would that be? But that is it. That's down to 10 pages. As I said, if you want to go and look that up yourself, you've got all the information that you should be able to need to get yourself to look at it. So let's get down and see what it's saying about these Mexican National Guards. The training of Mexican National Guard forces clearly under UN control, in which they are actively training today in southern Mexico to assume their positions as the arbitrators of martial law. And they will also serve as jailers in FEMA camps as prescribed in FM 39.4, the PDF that we just looked at. On this topic, we will be presented a 2-part, and it will coincide with many of my intelligence sources as presented on the CSS over the past 5 years. A footnote: I feel compelled to mention how many discussions I've had with independent media colleagues about how information that was once 4 to 5 year old is now surfacing in ways that we could not have accurately predicted until just recently. The following is an encapsulation of FM 39.4. Maybe that could be a good title for tonight's stream. Radio Fema FM 39.4 on your dial. Actually, I think we will go with that. Good idea, T. Sorry about that. The purpose of a political detention camp. Hitler, Mao all used concentration camps to dispose or re-educate citizens who may not be on board with the totalitarian regime change in their country. An examination of this of this topic should begin with a simple question. Will American soldiers fire upon American citizens upon a martial law roundup of millions of Americans? Unfortunately, the answer to that is a moot point. It is clear from analyzing data from army concentration camp materials that American soldiers will be used to round up political detainees. However, the camps in which people will be deported to will ultimately be staffed and run by foreign troops. These troops will be under the United Nations control, the Unified Nazis, the Fourth Reich. Folks, this document will make this point abundantly clear. There are three major elements related to traditional concentration camps that are covered in the balance of the report. FEMA camps are slave labor, FEMA camps are intended death camps, and FEMA camps will eventually be run for foreign troops under UN control who will be willing to do to Americans what American soldiers might not be willing to do with Americans. Point one, FEMA camps are slave labor. This was the case with the Nazis. Slave labor will be part of the landscape as evidenced by the following Army document, Appendix J, J20 FM 3.39.40. Commanders must organize and manage detainees in such a manner as to permit the proper and ready employment of each detainee. Establish and maintain a current occupational skill record for each detainee, including new skills as they are acquired. Assigning individual detainees to work detail or job on regular or permanent basis. There you go. Labor considerations. Detainee labor may be used to perform the following camp administration, agricultural, public works, transportation and handling, and domestic services. Executive Order 13603. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. The key phrase here is herein granted. Those powers are granted to Congress by the states of and the people and are delineated in Article 1 and primarily in Section 8 of the same. Nowhere does the Constitution say that federal agencies can allocate all food, energy, water, food, and all labor. However, this is precisely what Executive Order 13603 calls for. This executive order would be concerning enough. However, this executive order turns every American into a slave through the stroke of Obama's pen, or maybe Biden's pen, or whatever liberal would allow Obama to do in the White House. I am of the opinion that Obama was to be followed by Clinton, and she would have executed this executive order. Loving your enslavement. Share if you agree, if you love your enslavement, folk. 99% have got to agree. The 1% you get the blue badge and off to the special section of the camp. But according to Executive 13603, the president or the head of any federal agency that he shall designate can conscript persons of outstanding experience and ability without compensation in both peacetime and times of national emergency. And the leftist supporters now are, they will write to me, no Democrat will ever do that. You are drinking from the Kool-Aid. Well, here it is. You can read it yourself. Section 502. Consultants, the head of each agency, otherwise delegated functions under this order is delegated the authority of the president under section 710B and of the Act 500 USC App 2160. To employ persons of outstanding experience and ability without compensation. This is, in fact, the Nazi Germany material and was resurrected in America by Obama. This means that Obama and his fellow communist successors could seize any resources, property, or person at any time for any reason, including being able to force that person to perform assigned labor without being paid. There is only one word for focused, uncompensated employment, and that would be slavery. Congratulations goes to former President Obama as he effectively repealed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Section 6001 of the Act specifies in part how far the government can go in terms of making you their slave. There you go. This Article 601. I'm not going to read all of that for you guys. If the above section was going to be a military draft, then the Secretary of Labour would not have to be involved. However, as you will note, the Secretary of Labour, in coordination with the Secretary of Defence and heads of other agencies as deemed appropriate by the Secretary of Labour, shall assist in the development of policies regulating the induction of and deferment of a person for duty in the armed forces. As we know from our Nazi history, the inmates were used for their labors and systematically starved to death or simply executed. Are we in for the same fate? From the perspective of history, concentration camps are notoriously known for being institutions of murder. Based on this notion, I scoured the Army concentration camp manual entitled we've seen that PDF above, 39.4, and found only scant reference to the subject of deaths in concentration camps. Now, wait a minute, this document painstakingly describes interrogation process, food preparation, the transport, and the care of detainees, but they barely mention how they are going to deal with dead bodies. Aren't people going to die in captivity? In a facility filled with divergent populations with regard to age, health status, and physical conditions, shouldn't the authorities be concerned with what happens when an inmate dies from an unexpected heart attack or stroke, or maybe an electromagnetic frequency induced heart attack or stroke? What would they do with the dead bodies if proper preparations are not taken for the proper care and disposal of dead bodies? Wouldn't that imperil the health of the fellow inmates, not to mention the guards and other military personnel? Point 2, FEMA camps are death camps. From the aforementioned references, the following passages speaks to how the army deals with the subject of death as it is related to concentration camps. When a detainee in U.S. custody dies, the attending medical officer will immediately furnish the detention facility commander or hospital commander or the commander of the unit in custody over the detainee if the death did not occur in the facility with the detainee's full name, detainee's ISN, capture tag, mandatory, and the date, place, and circumstances of the detainee's death. Initial assessment as to whether the detainee's death was not the results of the deceased's own misconduct. The initial assessment as to death may be caused. So maybe he caused some misconduct and was executed, right? What is interesting about this, the cause of death is not categorized in any meaningful manner, except to say there is a conscious effort to determine if the death of the inmate was due to their own actions. All right, what we just suggested.